we why don't we get going since it's
Sure.
and I want to thank our district manager Will Brightbill for handling all this and his great technical expertise to keep us all connected here. And I want to welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Transportation Committee of Community Board 8. I'm Chuck Warren, the co-chair of the committee, and Craig Lader, my other co-chair, is also here. And our first item is a revocable consent, so a proposed fenced-in area including steps, planters, together with a snow melt system in front of 106 East 78th Street. We have people here to present. I thought I heard that.
I do see Anique Pearson. I'm going to unmute her. Anique, if it's just you who is going to be presenting, I believe. So
yes, just me.
Great. Good to see you again.
Hi.
So
Nice to see familiar faces. I've been here before a few weeks ago on the townhouse renovation scope of work, and I'm back for describing the revocable consent for an areaway expansion. So Will, do I do a share screen at this point?
Give me 2 seconds and I'll.
If we have,
yes.
We have some drawings to look at.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the drawings are on our website for anybody else who needs them, but she's going to be able to share her screen. Anique, you should be free to.
I'm doing that now. And enlarging the view so everyone can see. Is everyone able to see that?
I think it looks fine.
Okay. Somehow I'm starting on the last page. Okay. So I'm the architect for this project at 106 East 78th Street, which is on the south side of 78th between Park and Lexington. It's next to its sister buildings, which were built at the same time by the same family, 108 and 110 East 78th Street. And it's next to a 12-story condo building at 875 Park Avenue. The property now, as you can see in these photographs, has a current areaway. It used to be sunken areaway partially on one side of the townhouse for a doctor's office, a pediatrician's office, and then on the other side was the entrance to the pediatrician's home. We're proposing to convert this single family split with doctor's office into a full single family. And we would like to enlarge the areaway so that both of the entrances on the ground floor go to the same level as opposed to 2 different levels right now. So as you can see in the context that 106 East 78th Street already has a fence that goes past the property line. The partial plot plan here shows that the property line is about 3'6" away from these front doors, and the current fence extends beyond that by a little bit. 108 East 78th Street also has a front areaway fence, and so does 110 East 78th Street. On the other side, toward 875 Park Avenue, you'll see there's a granite wall, which is further out from the existing fence at 106 East 78th Street. So the distance between this granite wall and the tree pit at 875 Park currently is about 6'2". So that is the narrowest part of the sidewalk on this block on this side of the street. This page describes, shows existing versus proposed. The existing fence here extends past the neighbor's granite wall at 875 Park already. We're proposing to expand the areaway just by 1'11", so that the distance between the tree pit and the areaway fence would be 6'4", so 2 inches wider than what's the clear walking path at 875 Park. We are proposing to take away the existing fence, to excavate down to 3 feet below the sidewalk, to have bluestone pavers, an in-ground planter where the owner would like to grow a wisteria, a raised planter where the owner would like to grow some box trees and evergreens, and then against the townhouse, a couple of planters and a bench just as a landing area before the front doors. The fence itself that we're proposing to install has been changed. The design has been changed from this kind of nondescript, non-traditional fence to a neoclassical fence with diagonals and rosettes in a painted black iron. The owner would also like to install snow melt underneath the sidewalk and underneath the sunken areaway so they don't have to shovel the snow in the winter. So this describes a little bit more what the fence would look like with the diagonal pattern and the rosettes. The planters would be raw cedar planters left to weather with a stainless steel liner. And I think I mentioned the pavers in the sunken areaway would be bluestone. And then underneath all that would be a snow melt system. I think that really concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has specific questions about the proposal.
Anik, before we take questions, Anik, how would you service the snow melt system if something had to be changed or done? Where's the end? How would you get underneath?
The areaway is 3 feet below the basement floor. Sorry, three feet below the sidewalk, and the snow melt would enter the cellar. In the cellar, there's a mechanical room right off the street. So you could get to the snow melt system from the cellar, from the inside of the townhouse.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we take some questions, and the way we normally do it is see if there are any questions from the public on this application first. Are there any members of the public? And you should just, if you're on the Zoom, there's a hand that you can see, and you should just raise your hand. And Will, you'll have to let me know if there are any hands raised from the public at this point.
Yeah, the raise hand icon can be found in the participants menu. Right now, the participants menu can be found at the bottom of your screen and has the number 47 next to it. So at the bottom of that menu, whenever you open that, you'll be able to find the raise hand icon on the bottom right-hand side of that. It should look like a raised hand. Raising your hand on camera, we won't actually be able to see it. Right now, I only see committee members who've raised their hand. Okay,
so we have no public members of the public that want on this. So why don't you let me know who the committee members are who want to talk first?
So just going to give you the first three because there are 6 total. Barbara Rudder, Jordan Woke, Alita Camp.
Okay, Barbara Rudder first. Why don't you, Barbara?
Barbara, you may have to click a button at the bottom of your screen.
Unmute yourself, Barbara.
Oh, I just muted her back. Sorry about that, Barbara. Try again.
There's no conspiracy against her.
Yeah. I like when Jordan goes first. We're usually a horse and wagon show with this. Let me ask you, you said something that I don't quite understand. For the snow melt, are you saying that you never have to break up the sidewalk, that the whole installation and any repairs would go through the roof of the basement, rather through the ceiling of the basement, rather than through the sidewalk?
Well, only the tubing is underneath the sidewalk, so someone would have to physically jackhammer the sidewalk away for it to break. you know, if Con Ed would come through and make repairs to the sidewalk or street or dig through the sidewalk, that's the only occasion when the snow melt tubing would be broken. Otherwise, it's cast into the sidewalk itself, into solid concrete.
I have to say, I am a doubting Thomas. As I said, it's been many, many years, and this may be new technology, but I'm very aware of snow melt systems. I lived in an area where houses were on a very big hill, and I didn't have it, but it was not uncommon for people to have this system that usually broke very easily. I do know that Con Ed and Verizon and everything is with us, you know, nonstop, because things do break under. And a speech that people who've been on the board have heard me say before, I believe anybody should, could use their money any way they want, as long as it doesn't affect anybody else. I do feel that more noise, more breaking up sidewalks, more disturbing of walking along the way, and this is something that's just not necessary. 3 feet under, if my memory is correct, it's something like can only have like a ½ inch or an inch of snow for it to be worthwhile. If you have a snowstorm, this is not going to help. It can't possibly be warm enough to melt something any more than that. It's something where you could probably use a broom to sweep away the amount of snow that would be there, that would make the difference. And meanwhile, we're affecting everybody else that's there. So if we do have a resolution, I hope it's separate, because I would like to vote against this.
Okay, but just to be clear, Anik, I think you wouldn't have to be able to service this normally. You wouldn't have to break up the sidewalk. You would just go through the basement. You're saying if something happened that broke the pipes, that might be a different issue. I don't know if you may have to then go into the sidewalk. Why don't you explain then, or carefully?
Yes. The only part of the system that's cast into the sidewalk is the tubing.
Right.
And so the generator of the heat and the equipment itself is in the cellar. So if any equipment breaks, that can be accessed easily.
Right.
At the place.
So only if something happened to break up the tubing. That's what
I'm saying. I think that's more likely. I won't say it's a monthly advance, but enough that I feel that it's not enough of a service. I am all for helping people out for things, but this is not enough of a service to inconvenience the amount of time. I could tell you it does break, and we know that because Verizon is in our streets all the time. We have things do break.
This is the sidewalk, not the street. But anyway, why don't we go to Jordan Woke? Jordan. Is Jordan unmuted, Will?
There we go. Hi there, Anik. Please tell me again how much less how much the owner wants to extend into the current public sidewalk?
Yes. I'm trying to read the numbers on my screen here. Sorry if I have bad eyesight. Okay. So the current fence right now is 12 foot 4 inches away from the curb, and the proposed expansion reduces that to 10 foot 8.
Help me with the arithmetic. That's 1 foot plus how many inches?
I'm gonna use my calculator just to be sure. 12 foot 4 inches minus 10 foot 8 inches is 1 foot 8 total. Okay. And how does that compare to the neighboring fences and concrete, whatever? Yes. The clear distance from 875 Park granite wall to the tree pit, the clear distance is 6'2", and the clear distance that we would propose to install between our fence and the tree pit, it's 6'4". So
How
it's
about, go ahead.
a 2 inch wider than 675 Park.
And how about to the curb?
To the curb, it would be the difference of, see, that number I don't have, but it would be, we would be at 10'8" to the curb, and 875 Park would be at 10'6" to the curb.
Okay. Before we get to the in-ground heating, how does the community benefit from the fence being moved out?
It's not the community that benefits. Obviously, it's the homeowner, to have a larger areaway to be able to maneuver their children's, they have 3 small children. Some of them are still in pushchairs, and they'll have to take the pushchairs down 3 steps, 3 feet below the sidewalk to get them in the front door. And this gives them a bit of maneuvering space.
Okay, I think I could have sympathy with it, but it's possible that in future years, there will not be people living there with 3 young children. So to me, that is not a justification. That's something that would be convenient for now, so I wouldn't be in favor of it. Now talk to me about the snow melt system. What kind of system is it?
It's a, sorry, I'm looking for the,
Thank
the-
you.
yes. It's, gosh, I've forgotten the terminology, but it's not a water system that freezes. It's one of these antifreeze systems, so that even when it isn't on, it's not going to expand and freeze and break.
Okay, so a liquid is being pumped through there, or fluid, to be precise?
Yes, a non-freezing fluid, yes.
Okay. So I would hope that we could separate it. I don't particularly see why the community should give this particular property owner more of our sidewalk than the property currently has. And we can talk about the heating system otherwise, but I agree with Barbara that maybe these can be separated. Thank you very much.
Next is our board chair, Alita Camp. I think Alita was next.
Thanks, Chuck. And I'm speaking personally. I'm opposed to any taking of public space for private use. It interferes with the public, as Jordan and Barbara have mentioned. It interferes with the public's ability to traverse the sidewalk. 6 feet 2 is very narrow, and I just find it offensive that people would take public land and use it privately. So I am opposed to this. Thank you very much, Chuck.
Will, do we have other members that want to talk on this? I can't.
You do. Next is Michelle, followed by Marco, then Billy, then Rita Popper, Lori Boris, Valerie Mason.
Whoa, okay. All right. Okay, so we have Michelle next. Go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle, you'll have to click a button at the bottom of your screen to confirm unmuting.
Yeah, okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
You can hear me, okay, great. So a couple of questions. I thought I heard from your initial presentation that the fence that is existing is already past the property line, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So how much past the property line is the existing fence?
It is 2'11" past the property line.
Okay, so, and now you're proposing that it be an additional 1.8 past the property line, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you're claiming that it brings it within 2 inches of the concrete and the fencing at 875. It's a little difficult to tell from the picture, but it looks as though this home's entrance is more directly in front of the tree pit than the fencing at 875. Is that just the angle, or is that true?
The main entrance of 875 Park, I believe, is on Park Avenue.
Yeah,
so-
no. I mean, the concrete that's supporting the fence. They're marble or concrete. Yes, that's you're pointing at. Now,
Yeah.
it looks as though that is not, that the tree pit is not in front of that. It looks as though the tree pit is in front of the doorway of your building. Is that correct, or is it just an illusion?
Yes, that's correct. This tree pit is in front of our doorway on our
Okay.
property,
So,
and then
yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead, sorry.
875 Park has 2 more tree pits before Park Avenue.
Okay, so at that particular point, though, the narrowing is really just at your doorway. It's not necessarily at the concrete because it's in front of your doorway. All right, another question. Now, you have 2 front doors there, one level with the sidewalk and one lower. You are proposing to lower the one that's level with the sidewalk? So you're
Yes.
digging it out?
Yes, exactly.
So if the snow melt system is down in that well, are you providing a drain? What happens to the melted snow and the water?
Yes, there is a drain at the bottom of that areaway. And
And
here
where will it flow to?
it is flowing through the stormwater waste pipe that feeds out to the street, just like roof water runoff and rear yard runoff. So that all gets piped off to the sewage, New York City sewage system.
Okay, thank you. And access to that from the interior of the building, from the basement, you would only really have access to the controls that are under the areaway, because the basement probably goes under the areaway, but it doesn't extend out to under the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is completely vulnerable. You have no interior access.
Right, the sidewalk is solid.
Okay, so there's no interior access. Now, this looks like a tubular, there's a liquid running through it, and that's what gets heated and melts the ice. What about wiring? Where is the wiring? Is that interior to the building also?
It is entirely inside the building. The wiring and the equipment, the electrical systems are inside the cellar.
So if anything went wrong with the wiring, that can be fixed internally without breaking the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My objection is primarily to the extension into the public way. I think, you know, you're going to go out close to over 4 feet from the original, and just because it's expanded now, to me, is not a justification to continue that. So I appreciate the concern, you know, that your family has, and that it would be more convenient for them, but I don't see how that serves the public. So I would probably disapprove it on that. However, the extension, however, am not opposed to snow melt systems. I always like to be assured that sidewalks don't need to be broken up with any regularity to service them. I don't know that we have that assurance here particularly, but if you take it as a whole, I will vote against because of the incursion into the property anyway. And just as an aside, where did you have to get approval to drop the areaway excavated and cut out for the second front door to make that taller?
We would have to get approval from Landmarks and from DOT.
So have you had the approval from Landmarks yet?
Yes, we have.
Was it at the staff level? Because that part didn't come before the Landmarks Committee.
No, we had a full hearing, and at the hearing, they voted in favor of the areaway, even expanded. It was unanimous.
Hearing where? At the community board or at Landmarks?
At Landmarks.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, good. Next, I think it was Rita. Rita, is that right? Will, Rita Popper next?
Marco, and then Billy, and then Rita.
Okay, sorry. Marco.
Marco?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
we hear you.
Okay. Well, Michelle just.
Well, you're cutting out, Marco, now. So.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. First, Michelle, she raised one issue that was concerned, but the bottom line is I have a couple of questions and then my statement. The first question, I think you clarify about the landmarks. I think it's a shame that you don't come to the community board, and because all the applications that encroach the airway or work on the airway, usually all the applications coming to the community board. One. Two, is this application that you have right there match the drawing that you file in the Department of Buildings, in the airway, and in the enlargement? You have an enlargement in the rear yard too. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, did you hear? I don't know. Did you
The
hear?
question is for the applicant, please.
Right, I understand. Did you?
I understood the first comment and I will respond to that, but I had trouble hearing the second one, but let me start with the first one. We did submit this application to DOT before our landmarks hearing. So, you know, I guess because of COVID-19 and the lag in, you know, response time, we didn't get to present this to the community board for transportation before our hearing, but it was submitted before our hearing. So we did give it submitted ahead of time so that we should have been able to present this before our landmarks hearing. And
But
I'm
you-
sorry, I didn't understand your second question. Could you repeat
Let
that?
me just be sure, Nick.
Yeah,
You never came before the community board. That's what you're saying. You
Yes.
did file a landmarks application and it was heard by the commission, but you never came before the community board.
Right, it just never, the community board meeting wasn't scheduled before our landmarks hearing, unfortunately, but we did file with DOT before our hearing by weeks, yes.
Anik, I want to point out, you guys did come to the April 2020 Landmarks Committee meeting.
Yes.
To present the application to Landmark, to that
Yes.
committee,
Yes,
but not
thank you,
about
Bill.
the snow melt.
That's what no, forget the snow melt, but I mean, that's what I wanted to clear. I thought you said you didn't come, but you did come before the board in April. Then Michelle had came before the board. So,
I misunderstood, sorry, yes.
yes.
So
Yeah, and that resolution is from that was actually on our website, but I'll also post it into the chat for everyone.
Okay, so the second question that I have is, are you aware that maybe 20 feet away from the building is the school that is in process of enlargement, so they're going to increase more children and therefore more pedestrians in the sidewalk. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware.
So the issue is now you know that the school is going to enlarge the number of students that they're going to use the sidewalk, and then the applicant, they're going to change I think 2-family house to 1-family house, probably maybe have more than 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 square feet for the children, and they have a rear yard of 30 feet. Now you need an extra feet on the front, so the children of the owner, they can maneuver in front of the house. Is that what it is?
The townhouse is on the Park Avenue side of the block. The school is on the Lexington Avenue side of the block. I'm not sure how the question about the rear yard relates to the front areaway. I'm sorry.
It relates that you said for the owner, they need the children to maneuver in front of the house, having a beautiful 30 feet rear yard on the back that the children can maneuver very well. So they have plenty of space. 1 and 2. This is, I think, it's 2-family house. Now you convert it in a 1-family house, which is very large now. And I think they have plenty of space for the children inside as well as in the rear yard. And then you need another space for the front yard. And I didn't pay attention to this application. I was unaware of these the conditions when probably I say yes in the April meetings, but if I say yes, I was wrong. But because now I pay attention to that, basically myself, I found it that you try to reduce the public sidewalk on the benefit of the owner who has converted in a 1-family house, a 2-family house, and you have a rear yard, you have plenty of space. So this is one. The other question that I have is this in compliance with the energy code to put on the snow melting?
Yes, we are complying with the energy code on all of our scope of work for the entire townhouse.
I'm saying to you is the use of energy on the outside, not the inside, outside of the house, because this is one thing is the inside, and another thing which basically does is what is called
Oh, wait a minute, Marco, please, let's look. It's all a question of the use that they're making. It's not inside and outside. They're going to have the machinery in there, and it's going to be the stuff's coming from there, and it's all part of the same thing. And if they say they're
point of order, Mr. Chair. You know very well the Robert Rule regulations, and the point is right here. I raise the issue. You are the person that only you're a facilitator in this process. Who's supposed to answer this question is the applicant. And so the applicant will be the person knowledgeable to explain to us. And that is basically your role, with all respect. And you are the most expert in Robert Rules, parliamentary procedure. So my question is still for the applicant. So is this to provide heat?
She answered your question already. And look, Marco, let's not belabor this. We have a number of people who want to speak. We've got your point.
So the point is you want to cut my point of view. That's it. That's what it is. It does not know you wrong. My point is I have the right to express my opinion. And I wait patiently for my time.
You stated.
I'm happy to answer that question. We did apply for the energy compliance for the entire mechanical system, including the snow melt, and it is in compliance.
Can we move on, please? Because we have. So so I'm going to make my statements. So that's what I say at the beginning. My point is basically is you encroach the public sidewalk, and then basically is against or the especially for the children of the school that they were walking more in that area, and then you want to reduce the sidewalk. And the area that we are discussing right here is the part in front of the tree. That is the biggest problem, because the children is not gonna jump on the fence of the tree and then keep walking. No, I think that what they need, the children will need a space for circulation and go and walk safe in that neighborhood. That is my point.
Okay, thank you. I think Billy's next.
Yeah, and if we could just try to keep our comments relatively brief. I know we have a few items coming up that I think a lot of people are here for and are going to take a while. And we have at least 6 more members who wish to speak. So just in the interest of time, we're going to just politely ask if we could just keep things succinct. Thank you.
Yep. In the interest of time, I'll keep it to one question. It's something a constituent asked me about this. If the snow melts, the temperatures remain low, it seems like it could get pretty slick. You might have some ice out there. How does the system just work in that respect, and what kind of protections do you have for pedestrians?
Well, the owner is aware that they still, this isn't a worry-proof system. They'll still have to have, active monitoring of the sidewalk and making sure that everything is working properly, that the snow and the ice is getting melted and evacuated. So if the snow melt system does not perform, if it's a very cold day, or if it melts and then there's a deep freeze, they still have to adhere to their requirements to clear the sidewalk so that it's not slick and dangerous. They know that they have to supplement that system with the monitoring and with maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Is it now Rita? Is Rita next?
Yes.
Rita. What?
Rita, you may have to push a button at the bottom of your screen to confirm unmuting. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rita.
Very, very few questions. We've had a lot of people come before the board with applications for snow melting. Is the Transportation Committee aware that there has been dangerous or things that have happened to systems that have already been installed?
Not that I've heard. Will, have you had any, Will, have you had any things at the board where there have been problems that have come to your attention or the board's attention?
I have not ever heard of a problem with a snow melt system. Colleen, have you heard of anything like that? You can just nod yes or no. No, she says no. So yeah, it's not something I'm aware of.
The systems that didn't work 25 years ago in a different state should really not be compared to this. I, as a senior, would like to tell you how excellent it is when you get to a house where the snow is melted and it's an icy day. It makes you feel very secure. I am voting in favor of this, and I hope that other people will take this into consideration for not only themselves, but for seniors in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, who do we have now next?
So we have Lori, Valerie, Sharon, and Cause.
Okay, Lori, why don't you go ahead? Lori Boris?
Okay, I'm unmuting myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to agree with everything that Rita just said, and to add to it the disabled. It is really in 2020, we have this technology that works very well. We haven't had complaints about it, and it is incredibly reassuring, as Rita said, when you approach we haven't had a lot of snow recently, so that's been good. But when we do, it is very reassuring to see a clear path. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Valerie Mason, go ahead.
Quickly, I agree with what Rita said. I just want to ask, Anika, when you talk about 875 Park and the 6'2" footage, but it looks like from the entire rest of the block that you have a lot more sidewalk. So you would really be sticking out from the rest of the block. Is that correct? I don't care about 875 Park, but if you go from 106 all the way down to Lexington, it seems like everybody has the clear frontage from their property line. Is that correct?
No, actually, I'm sorry, I misrepresented this by only drawing the immediate neighbors area way extensions, but there are others down the block leading to Lexington Avenue. I'm sorry, I don't have that in the plan right now, but I'm happy to submit it if you'd like some additional information after this hearing.
So you're saying that there are more houses on that block that go beyond the property line to like a 6'6" to the tree pits? Because you're showing tree pits all along the sidewalk, yes, all the way to Lexington.
Yes, there are other townhouses down the street toward the east that have an expanded area way beyond their property line. Yes.
Beyond where you would be going? Because the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm prepared to vote in favor of your snow melt system, but I'm not prepared to allow you to go out further because it looks like there's more sidewalk footage everywhere on that block other than what you're showing us. But if you're telling me,
yeah, there are others beyond this sidewalk bridge, and this obscures all the others on this side, but there are others down the block, and I can submit a photograph or a diagram of that after this meeting if if you'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think I would actually. I mean, I don't think we have for me, I don't want you to go out further. I mean, I'd actually like to go see it between the time we actually vote on this at the main board meeting, but because now I'm more confused.
Okay.
That's it. I'm done, Chuck. I'm done.
Thanks, Elvie. Thank you. Is cost next then, Will?
Sharon, then Cause, then Elizabeth Rose.
Okay.
Sharon.
Sharon, yeah, go ahead. Is Sharon?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I'm going to vote in support of the snow melt system. I think every building in New York City should be required to have one. With respect to the extension of the gate, this is very troubling to me. I view it as a taking of public property. And I would further ask that the Transportation Committee look at this, because this is actually not the first time that an applicant has come to us asking to extend their gate from their property line. And overall, I would like to see the board take the position overall that we're just not going to entertain these types of applications, and that we are really going to decline or vote no against them overall. That's it.
Okay,
That's it for me.
Thank you, Sharon.
Next is Cause.
Okay, Cause.
Okay, I assume, how much space do you currently have now in front of the doorway that they can turn the prams or strollers or whatever you want to call them?
From this door or the one that's sunken?
The sunken door, the entryway, they go down 2 or 3 steps. How much room do they have before they enter the building?
About, I'm looking at the dimensions here, about 15 feet 3 to the curb.
No, not the curb. When they go down the steps to the front door.
Oh, it's only about 3 foot by 3 foot.
Okay, so now it's going to be 3 feet by the length of the building. So why do they need 5 or 6 feet to turn strollers or prams or whatever they need? Do they need that much space before they enter the front door? That's what I'm against, the extension. Now, my other question, all the snow freeze is under the property, before the property line, correct? It's in their property.
It is in their property and outside of their property as well.
So how much is outside their property?
Everything from this property line here to the curb. So it's
but the snow melt isn't going to the curb, is it?
Yes, it's covering the sidewalk as well as the sunken area.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Right?
You know, we're going to start to get more and more of these snow melts. Maybe we should have somebody come and explain what the actual process is, what's involved, because you're going to have piping under the concrete regardless. How many times are you going to have Con Ed digging the length of the sidewalk instead of across the sidewalk? The only time they're going to dig that sidewalk is when a new gas line or something goes into the building. So, I don't know, we're discussing things that will never come up. So I think we should, I assume we're taking the two separately, the snow melt and the extension?
I don't know that we need to do that. I want to actually ask Colleen once we're finished discussing, because I'm not sure how because as I look at this, I mean, it's a revocable consent, and it's going to be for the whole thing. And I don't know what doing it separately will do. I mean, if you turn down one and don't the other, I mean, I don't know if that may be meaningless for the Department of Transportation, but I want to ask Colleen when we're done here.
But isn't the extension different to the snow melt?
Yeah, of course it is. But I'm saying it's irrevocable consent, and the Department of Transportation has certain guidelines that they go by in granting these revocable consents.
Okay.
So that's what I just want to see about that. But I think we seem to have now that I see we seem to have a number of people. Elizabeth Rose, I think one of our newer members. I'd like to call on Elizabeth. I think she looks like she's the next person.
Yes.
Thank you. And yes, I'm delighted to be joining the Transportation Committee for the first time today.
We're happy to have you. Happy to have you.
Thank you. So, do I understand correctly that currently one of the doors is at sidewalk grade level?
Yes.
So, this family that has several young children with strollers, instead of encroaching further into the public sidewalk to give them more space to maneuver, they could choose to use a street grade level entrance and create a landing in the interior of their home where they could then maneuver strollers and then put the steps down into the rest of the room on the interior of their residence rather than the exterior.
Yes, that's correct.
So I am opposed to the encroachment of the public sidewalk when they have alternative solutions that would not encroach on the public sidewalk.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Now I see some people who've already spoken.
And just add accessibility.
Sorry.
They are now creating a home with no handicap accessibility.
Yeah, I guess Anika, you want to say anything about that?
Well, one way or the other, they have to get down 3 steps, whether it's outside on the sidewalk or inside the townhouse. So one way or the other, they need to get down from sidewalk level to their ground floor, which is 3 feet below the sidewalk.
Okay, let's see who, there's a couple of people here who, as I see it, have not spoken before. Elaine Walsh, are you there, Elaine? Can you unmute Elaine, Will?
Elaine, you have to push a button at the bottom of your screen to confirm.
Unmute. Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We got you now.
Okay. The concern I have, and I have no problem with the sidewalk de-icing, but I think with the request, the second request, when I was listening, the applicant said that going east, there was other buildings who came out further. As you go east beyond the school, there's nothing else there. So I was confused. You then go into the next block, next to Third. So I needed some clarification what they were talking about. I think if you bought a townhouse and you've got a problem, you can also put a little ramp inside that's movable. But my question is, I didn't understand her presentation about going east.
My point is that there are other areaways that extend past the property line going east, though I didn't draw them in this diagram. I only drew the ones that were immediately west and east of this townhouse. But again, I'm happy to supply a photo or a plot plan to back this claim up so that you have concrete proof that.
Okay, but that's not what you said. You said going east beyond the school, there were buildings. There are none. And I know the block, and none of them go out that far. And you really are exceeding the space you need. And I'm sure architecturally you can figure out a way to work within the existing piece. If we can Chuck, separate out the application, which I understand I don't think we can, I would support the de-icing, but not the other.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elaine. Peter Borak, I know one of our public members hadn't spoken before. So Peter? Can you unmute Peter?
Yeah, Peter.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks for the applicant. I think what Sharon said earlier was spot on. I think I think it's great to have these automatic de-icing machines. I just think, it's really important, Chuck, to understand whether or not we can separate the question. I think it's a hard sell to take public space, the sidewalk, and to irrevocably give it to a private landowner. It just seems to be the reverse of what should be happening in our city now. So I think it's going to be hard to vote yes on that aspect of it. And I don't know what to do if we can't separate the question, because I think Rita's point about it being a safe passageway is a good idea. But it's just hard to understand why we would be taking space from the public and giving it to a private landowner. It doesn't really, I don't quite follow that logic. That's all.
Okay. Now we had a couple people who have spoken before, Jordan, I know, and Alita. Jordan, you want to say something quickly? Should we unmute Jordan?
Jordan, you'll have to.
First of all, the justification is that the family has 3 kids in strollers. Well, it could well be that in 5 years from now, there'll be no kids in strollers, and therefore the revocable consent should be revoked in 5 years. So I don't think that the use or the not use is the issue, because, as I say, the strollers won't be needed in a few years, or maybe they'll be needed 25 years. So I don't buy that. And secondly, if you want to heat every sidewalk, and remember, they have to start to heat it before it actually gets to 30 degrees in case it does. How many power plants are you willing to have built in Manhattan to support all of the energy that you would need for this? And the answer is you probably wouldn't be willing to do that. Any one of them, fine, but as you start to go to the full city, it's a problem. So I'm not in favor of it, nothing personal, but it's just too much. So neither one. Thank you.
Okay, you have Peter and Billy. We lost Craig. Can you speak for a second? I lost Chuck's mic.
Yes. So I guess we have
Chuck,
Billy
you're-
now.
Okay.
Back here.
So I was just raising my hand to propose a resolution to move this along.
Yes.
And the resolution I'm thinking is essentially to express support for the snow melting aspect, but to disapprove of the sidewalk extension. And if we can't separate the two, then I think it would look like a resolution that is essentially a disapproval of the whole thing, but that if it's feasible to suggest, look, in a future meeting or whatever, if they want to come back on just the snow melt, that is something we are generally sympathetic to. Is that something we can do, Chuck?
Yeah, we can do that, certainly.
That's what I want to put on the floor if anyone wants to second it.
So would it be a single resolution or would it be 2 separate resolutions?
Well, yeah, I would have done 2 separate, but I'm hearing, it sounds like we might have difficulty breaking this up. So I'm just looking to you guys for guidance on what the best way
I think a single resolution like that, Billy, is okay. You can do a resolution of disapproval for that, but with an indication that it's possible that it could be, or you could do, yeah. But if they want to come back with on the snow melt, they could do that, or we could just disapprove. Well, you know what? Let me. Is Colleen? I don't know if Colleen can be helpful on this, but can you unmute Colleen for a minute, Colleen?
Colleen, if you're at your computer, you need to push a button to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What is the question, Chuck?
Colleen, the issue is, we have the two things. We have whether we could, sort of separately have two separate resolutions, one on the fencing and the planting and all that, and one on the snow melt for a revocable consent. I mean, you're going to issue one revocable consent, I know that, but I guess the question is whether or not you would look at these things separately.
I mean, yeah, I can. Yeah, I think you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine. So let's do two separate resolutions. So you want to propose the resolution, one of them now, Billy?
Yeah, I'll just, a resolution in support of the snow melt system. Right.
Oh, okay.
Is that, I mean,
That's fine. Is there a second to that?
I see Lori Boris gave a thumbs up and a full board, and so did Rebecca Dinkor.
Thumbs up. Okay, so why don't we say that, since most people, not everybody, but why don't we say that consider everybody in favor. Those who are not in favor, raise your hand and we'll separately call on you.
So if you already have your hand up right now, you need to lower it if you're not voting against or with not voting for cause or abstaining.
Right.
So Alita, Elizabeth Rose, and Barbara Rudder. I'm just going to unmute them in order and let them
right.
Alita?
No. I'm sorry. I had my hand raised to make a comment earlier. I'm in support of the snow melt system.
Okay.
So that's all.
Mute yourself back. Thank you. Elizabeth Rose?
I just have a question because I am concerned that a resolution on this that says we're in favor of the snow melt system could possibly be misconstrued if it is decoupled from the proposal as it stands.
I think you
so
would do it as a part A and a part B of the same resolution.
Yes.
Part A would have one
I think
vote.
you have to attach them together so that you have clarity that you are voting against the extension of encroachment onto additional sidewalk, but supportive of conceptually implementing a snow melt system, though it would be different than what is currently proposed because we would not want them to go encroach on the sidewalk.
Okay, well.
Yeah, so Chuck, why don't we just do just like, when Landmark a couple months ago had part A and you're voting on part A and that's snow melt, and part B, you're voting on part B, that's extension. We'll do it that way.
Yeah, why don't you do that? So you want to propose, why don't you propose the resolution then, part?
Yeah, part A of what I'm proposing is about the snow melt.
So I don't know.
And it'll, have it there for, part A is approved and support the snow melt. And part B will be on the, I guess the area way is what we call it. And disapprove of the extension to the sidewalk. And I think that would probably look a lot like Landmark's resolution that passed probably.
Yeah.
Part A,
Elizabeth.
approval of the snow melt, and then part B is disapproval of the extension of the fencing, the planters, etc. We'll fix it up. Okay, so is there a second to that motion then?
As Rebecca and Cause, Michelle.
Okay, so all right, so why don't people will be assumed to be in favor unless they raise their hand.
And then they could vote on either.
And then they can vote on, well, there are two parts.
Yeah.
Can I just go through the list of who I see being signed in now as members, just to make sure that everyone is accounted for? So I have myself, Chuck, Jordan, Alita, Michelle, Marco, Billy, Rita, Lori, Abraham, Barbara Rudder, Barry, Brian, Kaz, Elaine, Felice, Gail, Jack, Lowell, Peter, Rebecca Dankor, Rebecca Lamort, Sarah Chu, Sharon, Mrs. Brown, and Valerie. Is there anyone who I missed?
Did you get Elizabeth Rose?
I believe I did.
There are
Actually,
two people on the phone. If you're a board member, please press *9 and we'll, so it'll raise your hand so I can unmute you. One of them was. The phone number ending with 021. Who are you?
That's me. It's Alita.
Okay,
I
thank
had
you.
to hang up from the computer and rejoin by the phone, so that's
No, it's
me.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, all right, so then we have people who raise their hand on this. So we have some hands raised, right?
You do. You have a lot of hands raised. Alita, I'm lowering your hand. If you're planning to vote no on in either part of that, please raise your hand again by hitting *9. And I think Jordan actually has a question. Maybe needs to have it explained. No. Okay.
He's waving it off. He's waving it off. Okay.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead.
everybody who has their hand up is either going to be voting no or abstaining or not voting for cause on an approval for the snow melt and a disapproval for the area way.
Right.
Great. So I'm going to start going through the votes and let them be tallied. Barbara Rudder, you'll have to unmute yourself.
No
Barbara
for
Rudder.
part. Do you hear me?
Yes.
But no for part A.
No on part A. Thank you. Chuck, are you writing this down, or Craig, are you writing this down?
Yes, I'm writing it down.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Peter Borak. Peter, you have to unmute yourself to say it.
Yeah, I just have a really quick question, Chuck. The only part about this that I object to is the extension of the sidewalk. The planters, I'm fine with if they're within the person's property. Can you just explain how that for the part B is working? I didn't quite catch that.
They're going to be we shouldn't really, now we're in the vote, we shouldn't really ask questions, but my understanding is they're going to be part of what's the extension.
Got it.
They're
All
not.
right,
They need a revocable consent for that too.
I understood. I tried to ask this before the vote, but I vote yes on 1 and no on 2, like like was presumed. So I'm going to remute myself and unraise my hand. Thank you.
Chuck, you actually have your hand raised. Are you clarifying your vote?
Yes, yes. Yes on 1 and no on 2.
And no is a yes then? Sorry.
I'm against the disapproval of the revocable consent for the fencing.
All right. I'm going to lower your hand. Jordan.
Hi, I am against the snow melt, and I am also against the extension into the public right of way. And if that means I'm voting yes on part B, this is.
You got it.
But thank you.
He's got it. He's got it.
Lita.
Yeah,
Alita?
I made a mess of this. I made a mess of it and can't figure out how to lower my hand. So I am in favor of the snow melt and in favor of the disapproval of the extension of the property.
Okay, thank you.
The revocable, because I wouldn't have raised my hand, but I can't lower it. So thank you.
That's okay.
Barry. Barry.
Yes, it's a yes on A. No. Yes on the snow melt, no on B.
Meaning that you're in favor of the extension.
That's correct.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to be sure. Abraham.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm against both. So I'm saying no on A for the snow melt and yes on the disapproval for the part B.
Thank you. Marco? Marco, you'll have to hit the button.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
No on both. No for the extension and no for this snow melting.
So you're in favor of the disapproval for the second part?
I'm sorry. That's, I have to be very clear. I said no for the extension of the sidewalk and no for the snow melting. I don't know how they organize. They shouldn't do that. They should divide both the different, but I respect whatever decision that he makes is fine. But both, and I am against for the extension and I'm against for the snow melting. I'm sorry for that. Thank you.
It's no and yes. It's no and yes on that. So Craig, he's no,
Yes,
he's
got it.
against the snow melt and he's against the extension.
Right, so
Okay.
he's no on A, yes on B.
Right, correct.
Okay,
I
Elaine.
guess Elaine?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes on the snow melt, no on the other.
Okay.
Again,
It's really yes and yes, but that's because the extension is a disapproval. So we
I'm
got
sorry,
that.
right.
You're fine. We
Yes.
got it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
And Mrs. Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. A, no, and B, yes. Now, which one is the disapproval? B?
B is a disapproval, yes.
Okay, so then it's A, no, and B, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
I raise my hand also because I'm a no on B.
You're a no on B, okay. So you're a yes and a no?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Does anybody, did we get everybody, Will?
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
just be sure to look at the minutes and know how you voted, and we can clarify it at full board if somebody is incorrectly marked down. Oh wait, Rebecca Dengor and Gil Barron both raised their hands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Rebecca?
I just want to say I took notes of the vote and I'll email them to both of you just as a backup.
Thank you.
One of our secretaries pitching in again.
You know, you don't have to be a secretary for this meeting also. You don't have more work when you don't have to.
Gail, I guess Gail also has, Gail Barron has, sorry.
Yes, Gail and Sarah both have raised their hand. Gail.
Wait, did you unmute yourself, Gail?
Gail, you'll have to confirm.
No, excuse me, I'm voting yes and yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And Sarah, I guess Sarah Chu we have. Sarah, welcome to our meeting.
Hi.
Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
I am in favor of the snow melt and in favor of the disapproval of the extension.
All right, so you're yes and yes. Okay. You didn't have to raise your hand, but that's okay. Okay, Will, are we done for this?
We are clear from this item. You may move on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Obviously, as a committee, we're going to have to look at these issues because there's a number of people who've raised the whole issue of extensions into the sidewalk. It's something, we've had a lot of these over the years and we generally have approved them. There's obviously seems to be a number of people who don't like that idea and we ought to discuss it. And I don't know if we can come up with a position, but let's see what's what. And we will. Okay, our next is number 2 is really a discussion of potential use of street space and additional sidewalk space for outdoor dining to support restaurants impacted by COVID-19. And this is a joint item with Street Life and Small Business Committees. And I think we have people here from all those committees. And we thank you. Sorry. This is the last time Cost said, hey, you should take us first. I said, now we'll take the revocable consent because that's going to be quick. Wrong again.
Yeah, blame me. That was my idea.
So why don't we, I don't know whether our assembly members here, because I know he's been active in this and he appeared before at board 6, I think, didn't he?
Right. So I don't see Keith Powers here, but I do see Jenna on here. I was just going to ask, if you don't mind, let me just provide a little context here just to frame this, and then I'll let any elected official representatives speak or any elected officials if they do join the meeting. So in regards to this item, there's a lot of action taking place. There is a New York City Council bill that was just put forward this past week. I believe that both of our council members are co-sponsors of it. The borough president has sent a letter to the board that was distributed. I believe it was distributed to the Transportation Committee. If it isn't, I apologize, and I'll make sure that it's sent out in favor of an expansion of the New York City Street Seats program. Both council members Powers and Kalos have sent a letter requesting something similar and have actually designated some streets that they wish to see expansion of sidewalk space or street space for restaurants. And just today, I guess Governor Cuomo during his daily update announced that the state has issued new guidance regarding when phase 2 reopening occurs, policies for restaurants or guidance for restaurants for outdoor seating. So these are just some of the background issues that I think frame this. And as I said, if there are any members, if there are any elected official representatives or elected officials who wish to speak, please raise your hand so we can unmute you and feel free to chime in. So I see Jenna has raised her hand.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that the hearing is at 10:30 tomorrow morning. I'm happy to help answer some questions. I know Colleen is on. She, probably knows more than I do. But any questions that come up tonight, I will take back to Keith, and he can ask at the hearing tomorrow.
Could we ask Colleen if you want to make any comments at this point, or do you want to wait? Why don't we unmute Colleen and see if you don't.
So, all I can tell you is that we saw the bill that the city council passed, and we have been working with restaurants and with other community boards to accommodate the request for additional space for the outdoor dining. And, we're very careful in, the selection process and the requests that we're receiving. And we've been really busy with the open street as well, with all the requests that we've been getting for that.
Colleen, have you been getting specific requests from restaurants to open the street for them?
I have not seen any requests in your district yet. I have not. But in other community boards, yes, I have. And other community boards have submitted resolutions where they have worked with some of the businesses who are requesting the additional space.
Okay. Do we have any?
Can Jenna just say what the streets are that Kalos and Powers have recommended?
Yeah, Jenna, do you have particular streets that where you're recommending that the streets be opened? We have to unmute. Will, can you unmute Jenna?
Sorry.
Sorry, all of that, and I actually don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that they're all east of Lexington. I think they're probably all in Councilmember Kalos's district, but I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, so actually, I can tell you, based on the letter, so the letter was co-signed by both Keith Powers and Ben Kalos, along with Borough President Gail Brewer. And the letter that was dated May 18th within Community Board 8 lists 2nd Avenue between 66th and 70th, 73rd to 79th, and 81st to 92nd Street, 1st Avenue from 49th to 64th, 68th to 69th, 73rd to 78th, 81st to 84th, and 87th to 89th, and then York Avenue from 75th to 79th Streets, and 84th to 86th Streets. And I guess this would be not a closure, just to read an excerpt from the letter, the answer is to work with public health experts to allow restaurants and bars to set up seating with proper barriers and a sufficient number of parking spaces in front of their establishments to reach as close to their capacity as possible while respecting social distancing. So that's the list of streets that they're proposing. I have a question for Jenna, that if she could bring back, I mean, unless she knows offhand, is there any consideration, given that both Second and First Avenues, of course, are corridors with both bus lanes and bike lanes, and moving into the curbside there is much more challenging, just from a safety perspective and from the standpoint of being able to maintain the bus and bike lanes than it would be elsewhere. So I guess my question is there a thought as to how it would work on those avenues? And is there any discussion about usage of side streets, which I know is also part of the broader discussion?
Who was that addressed to? And do I need to unmute somebody?
Jenna.
That was to
Jenna.
Jenna, give me 1 second. Jenna.
So my understanding is that even if there are bike lanes or bus lanes, any expansion into the street is not going to disturb that infrastructure. And I think DOT is going to be in charge of finding spaces that work for avenues. And then I believe there is consideration of side streets. That's not in the legislation, but that's something that can be asked at the hearing tomorrow.
Can we ask Colleen also? Colleen, on this, is the idea you would just do it into the parking places and it would not get out into beyond the parking spaces, and the side streets also be involved?
Yeah, obviously we're going to have concerns with places like First and Second Avenues because they're very busy quarter. As what Craig mentioned, you have bus lanes and you have the bike path as well, bicycle lanes. And if any consideration is to be made with First and Second Avenue, you're talking probably there might be a lost in travel lane. I'm just throwing that out there. But I know the community boards that I've been working with on this, a lot of the consideration has been directed towards side streets. CB6 had the, I think it's the East Side Alliance, which is a group of restaurants. They made a presentation asking for Second Avenue, I think between 50 something street. Can't remember the exact street. But again, any consideration to First and Second Avenues, that would have to be reviewed carefully.
Colleen, while I have you on, someone asked, how do restaurants request additional space? You'd mentioned that there are requests that have already been submitted.
Well, I know with CB4, they've been working with restaurants before all of this, and they did their outreach to some of the restaurants in their district to find out who's interested in doing, this with having the curbside lane access. Restaurants have been, I know calls have been made to 311. That's how we get a lot of the information. And we do get emails. Emails are sent to the Borough Commissioner's office through 311. So we have been getting requests through that way as well. It's not like the open streets where we had set up a website where, entities can, go use that website to request, open street closures. I think there's a different process involved here.
Will, have you heard from restaurants particularly that want to take advantage of this, moving out into the street or the parking spaces or wherever?
I'm sure there are. I don't know if I've had any direct conversations explicitly about this, but I think that I've heard general support for it, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it was.
Yeah, I want to say, I'm sure Department of Consumer Affairs have been getting a lot of requests on this as well.
I guess I'd like to ask the committee, the way I'm looking at this, I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of us probably feel we ought to help the restaurants and do something for them. And I guess the question is beyond at this time, beyond just expressing general support for this, I don't know if we're in a position to start saying, particular areas and stuff like that, because we don't quite know enough. And it might be a good idea if we reached out to some of the restaurant trade associations and stuff like that and see if they have specific areas that they have in mind, and then we can come back and talk about them directly. And this is not going to happen, obviously, until phase 2. And phase one is starting in on
Monday.
the 8th, and yeah, the 8th, and you have to have 2 weeks in phase 1 and make sure there's no increases in certain metrics before you can move into phase 2. So we may have a little time to deal with this, but I don't, I'm just throwing this out to the the committee to get a sense of this.
I have a question for Colleen, if I can, and I agree with what you're saying, Chuck, but Colleen, the way I would understand this is the restaurant would have the ability to take a parking space that was directly in front of their establishment. What would you characterize that as being the footage of? Because while, I agree that we want to do everything we can to help these businesses get out and start working, I just don't think that a parking space coupled with social distancing and rules and regulations about serving alcoholic beverages, that while the idea sounds really great in concept, in actuality, what are they going to get? 2 tables and a parking space? And what liability insurance is going to go along with that, et cetera. So what would be the area that technically you would at most give a restaurant?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. To go back, I think it all depends on, the capacity of that restaurant. Just because a restaurant have 50 tables and chairs, that does not necessarily mean all 50 tables and chairs are going to be out there in that curb lane. I think we will have to use our judgment in terms of, reviewing each and every restaurant and what their individual requests are. That doesn't mean Valerie, like you're saying, we're going to approve 1 parking space or 2 parking space. I think it depends, because at minimum you want to, again, the whole point is social distancing. You don't want people to be congregating outside on the sidewalk or again in the curb lane.
Right. I mean, but how can you serve an alcoholic beverage to somebody who has outdoor tables on 1st Avenue and 2nd Avenue with the amount of traffic that is going by? I mean, you're basically buying yourself a lawsuit right there.
Or it's possible no alcoholic beverage will be served outside while the seatings are out there. Maybe that'll be consumed inside of the, the restaurant or something, but not outside.
I mean, I'm all in favor of what you're saying, Chuck, about what, I'm sorry. I'm all in favor of talking to restaurants in the neighborhood about this and what they want to do. But I think we're going to be spending a lot of time on this. And again, it sounds great. I went back and talked to CB2 because they had a meeting on Monday or Monday night, and they had over 100 people on the web. But in the end, what the restaurants were asking for down there is to close side streets and, ask for a lot of space and then be able to keep them open with enough space to go till 10, 11 o'clock and even beyond, because a lot of these places are bar restaurants and they make their money off of serving liquor. And, if people are going to go out the way they did before, it's going to be after 9 o'clock. And the tension between residents and this whole issue, plus eliminating parking at a time when you can't use public transportation and people are going to be getting around by cars more than ever before, even to those of you who think that car transportation is going to be on the decline. I think at least in these months after COVID, it's actually going to be on the upswing. So I want to help these businesses, but I haven't heard anything yet that comes forth. I mean, it's great that the city council wants to do this, but they came back with they left the details to the community and putting us in a really bad spot, I think.
So let me just comment if I could, because I was just doing some research on this, and there's a lot of opportunity. I think one of the limitations we have within our community district is we have, all of our streets are part of the grid system. We don't have public plazas. We don't have streets like Broadway that create opportunities for what you see in other areas where they've been able to successfully close portions of the street and create more space. We don't have any roads that even do anything besides go in a straight line. So that's why other communities have looked to side streets and not just looking at individual parking spaces in front of establishments, but looking at parking spaces on the side streets themselves, using or even having more like an open street type concept where you can keep a lane open for emergency vehicles or slow moving vehicles. And you can then have expansion of the side of the sidewalk cafes onto the side streets, and servers would have to bring the food around the corner, let's say, but you'd be in a situation where you can then set something up during certain hours of day, so the parking won't necessarily be eliminated all throughout the day, but you can also have temporary barriers and other types of street furniture in place to allow for it to be a safe environment. So I just want to at least put out there the idea that this isn't just a black and white looking at parking spaces directly in front of restaurants, or that it would just be what right in front or in close proximity, that there are other ways to do it where you could set up something during different timeframes and expand it in a way that you wouldn't lose the throughput, and you can expand the space and still have a functioning street, yet providing restaurants an opportunity to have more space to be able to serve customers, or even to have it as a takeout type of environment. So people we've all seen the pictures of people congregating along First and Second Avenues with the restaurants that have the takeout bars, and people are just hanging out there. If you give them spaces to sit, or to be able to eat food, it does provide for opportunities. So as I said, it's not, I just want people to be creative and to think of ways that this could work. And yes, there's always going to be the consideration of how many parking spaces to give up, but that's always going to be an issue. And we're going to have to all come to terms with the fact that some people may believe that the value of having small businesses survive may trump the need for parking spaces.
Well, but okay, go ahead, Chuck. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, Michelle, let me get a couple of public people. I see we have a number of board members, and we'll try to get everybody in here. But let me call on Rob Burns, I believe, who's a member of the public and had his hand up. Will,
correct. Yeah, and just to let you know, you have Judy Schneider as well as a person named Leah.
Right.
And then I believe there's one other person who just chatted me that had a question, who's a member of the public. But
so Rob, why don't we have Rob Burns
great
first?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First, thank you, Will. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everybody. It's been always great to be at a community board meeting. It's even easier when I'm just sitting in my home office. I just want to throw in that we're basically in favor of open streets for dining. I have one concern, really. I mean, I have a few. There are issues that will be dealt with. And obviously this has to meet the neighborhood need too. But big issue is that the legislation that's out there right now, and Michelle will appreciate this, I hope, but gives vendors a free rein. And the fact is, this is a temporary measure designed specifically for, should be designed specifically for brick and mortar restaurants who cannot, because of COVID-19, have more than a few people in their physical facilities at best. So letting them have patrons outside, no matter how few, will help a lot more than right now what they only have with takeout and delivery orders, which are at best barely keeping them going. But as I started to say, vendors though, a lot of restrictions currently on vendors in the city, and I'm sorry I don't have all the exact language, but they would be removed. So vendors are not in the same position as brick and mortar restaurants. Vendors are already outdoors. Vendors should not have, I'm not saying they should be penalized, of course. They're part of the community too, but vendors should not have additional reign over the city, and therefore that's a concern. We would be more, my bid and the bid association would be more supportive if the vendor restrictions that are there right now would continue, and hopefully as the bill goes through the legislative process, reason will prevail. That's it. You can mute me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Judy Schneider, I see Judy with her hat on. Can we unmute Judy?
Okay. My question is either to Craig or for Jenna to find out. I understand about going out into the street, but what would happen to the sidewalk if we expanded the space, and how would the pedestrians have through passage on a side street? I think this is more applicable personally to side streets than it is avenues, but how would they have passage if would there be tables on the sidewalk, or would it just be out in the street? And the pedestrian passage is what I'm concerned about while you're doing this.
Maybe Colleen could answer this better. Jen, if you want to do it, if you think you can, but Colleen might know.
Well, let's see what Colleen has to say. She probably knows better.
Yeah. And while you're meeting Colleen, I'll just add that other places where they've instituted this on smaller streets, they've kept the sidewalks clear, and they've just literally put, it's like the street seats program where you put the
It would be in the curb lane.
Temporary infrastructure in the parking space itself. So this way you're maintaining the pedestrian access and providing the space in the street. And then you're providing the space within the street for vehicles to still be able to pass. And then you're putting in, whether it's something like planters or screens or something that, or temporary barriers that are more sturdy than that, to be able to provide that separation. And that does speak more to the street seats program, which maybe Colleen, you can just describe a little, because we don't have any examples of that within our community districts.
That's correct. I mean, Craig, you're absolutely right. If we were to do something like this, it would be in the curb lane, and they would be protective barriers, just so that the sidewalk would be clear. And it's very similar to the street seat concept, yes.
Right. Can you just talk about street seats? Because I don't know that people are familiar with it here, because as I said, we don't have any street seats designated within our district. They're more likely to be found downtown.
Yeah, I mean, Street Seat is a program that the DOT has worked with businesses to install seating in the curb lane, and the seating is open to any and everyone to be out there to sit and enjoy. You don't necessarily have to purchase any items in that particular business to sit out there. The business is responsible for the maintenance of the space, and we have these barricades and planters at each sides with reflectors protecting, the individuals who are sitting there, and for motorists to see that it's a street seat that's within the curb lane, and it's usually 2 parking spaces. If you go onto DOT's website and you type in street seat, you can see the entire configuration. And there's quite a few that's been installed in the city and in other community boards. I'm surprised you don't have any.
The link to it, Colleen, in the chat. So if people want to look at it, it's there.
Thank you, Will.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add that the borough president's letter is referenced. And Will, if you haven't posted that in the chat, if you could post that, that could help.
It was also posted into the chat.
The borough president's actually to expand the street seats program and eliminate temporarily that business. So as Colleen said, currently it's open to the public, but this would allow her proposal would be to expand that so restaurants would be able to have dedicated spaces or to allow restaurants to use that space as well to conduct business.
Why don't we have a few more public members, and then we'll get to the board. We got a lot of board members, but Leah, there's a public member by the name of Leah. If she's there, we can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's Leah Hanlon. What hours would you be proposing this setup would remain in place? I saw an interesting proposal from an Astoria neighborhood association that suggested it should be from 6 to 11 or some evening hours to facilitate deliveries and other traffic during the day.
Is there, Colleen, maybe you can answer that. Have there been any hours that they talked about in these proposals? Is there, what's the general range? Will, if you could yeah.
I don't know exactly what the hours would be. Again, when, I think I have my notes here, when the Restaurant Row East Alliance presented to Community Board 6, I believe they requested the hours, I think sometime after 11 a.m. up until 9:30 or 10 p.m. To have this kind of setup. It might vary depending on the businesses, or it might just be one, hour, one standard time frame.
The letters from the council members and the borough president requested or said outdoor seating should be restricted from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. So that's one proposal that's
there've been a few
floated.
Right.
I have a feeling the hours might vary depending on the restaurant's operation. That's what I think might happen.
Right. And street seats, if it were a street seat approach, that would be permanent in the sense of, as long as we're doing this, it would be in effect, it wouldn't be taken down on a daily basis. It would be put into place and then kept there until whatever point in time when the program when the season ends.
May I add something? That would be kind of crazy if you had a big 18-wheeler for Dwayne Reed and it was trying to make deliveries and the street had street seating on both sides. Shouldn't it be a temporary thing that extended perhaps only in the evening, except for weekends? Because how much lunch business do these restaurants have anyway? It seems like we're going overboard when we can get all of the benefit from a more tailored solution without clogging the streets. It's hard enough for deliveries to happen lately. Drivers have been having problems, and it's why make it harder?
Thank you, Leah. I think those are some of the things we'll have to try to get more information on. There's the last public member I saw, and Will, you'll have to correct me, is Andrew Fine, we believe is a public member.
Yes, he's a member of the public. Andrew, give me 1 second.
Okay, you can unmute Andrew.
Oh,
right, there you go, Andrew.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say that I
representing myself and not the views of the East 86th Street Association, which I'm on the board of. I wanted to voice my unequivocal support for small business in the neighborhood. There is a die-off happening right now as we speak. We don't see it because these businesses are closed, they're boarded up, they're constrained, but they're dying. And I think it's time that the community act to support these small businesses. And I think delay at this point really equals death. You know, when this is over, you might not see them again. And this is something that we would typically debate for weeks or months, but time is of the essence. And if we don't act now, a lot of these small businesses just plainly won't be here anymore. I'm not sure exactly how you want to go about it. And I'm a pro car, pro parking guy. I like to park on the street myself. But if we have to sacrifice a few spots until the end of October to keep these businesses in business and give them an opportunity to survive, I'm all for it. And I would encourage the community board to back these small businesses before it's too late.
Thank you, Andrew. Will, I didn't see any other, do you see any other public members? I didn't see any other public members.
I don't see any either.
Yeah. So why don't we have a number of board members. So I'll just start calling the board members and hopefully we can move along and have a good discussion. So let's see. I don't have everybody here. I have to get.
So from the top, you have Sharon, Michelle, and Barbara Rudder, and then it goes much further.
Then Billy. Where's Billy? I have Billy as the top. But
oh, Sarah was about to say something as a joint committee item. I don't know how you want to handle that.
Sure. Let's. Yeah. If anyone from one of the other committees, why doesn't Sarah go?
Hi. I'm so sorry. I have a childcare issue, and so I need to sign off soon. But the one and as co-chair of the Small Business Committee with Valerie, we want our small businesses to succeed for sure. And we know that this is a precarious time. And I just wanted to check in and see if there's any sort of, maybe one of the things that could address some of the concerns that have been raised is having some sort of public process. I know that public process takes time, and that could be time taken away from businesses that need solutions now, but to the extent that there could be some sort of expedited public process, I don't know if that's possible, but that was just the one thing that I wanted to check in on before I needed to sign off, and I apologize for having to do that.
No, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for coming. Let me call on Abraham Salcido, who's our chair of the Street Life Committee, and they're also one of the committees that are, on this item. So Abraham, why don't we unmute Abraham so he can say something?
Abraham, you'll have to push the accept button. I've tried to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay, great. Good. So yeah, no, I definitely wanted to, I'll be brief because I think, there's a lot of important issues and questions that are raised by this, but, I'm regularly walking around the neighborhood, seeing the places that are closing and wondering which ones won't be back, and talking to some of the small businesses and restaurants in the area. And I know they're struggling. So I think I would sooner act swiftly, knowing that this will be a temporary measure and that we can try to put parameters around it as we go, if that's going to help maintain and help some of these businesses that are really struggling to, stay with us. And again, knowing that, we're not trying to make this a long-term thing, but to try to ride out the great difficulties that they're experiencing.
Thank you, Abraham. Appreciate your participation here and comments. Why don't we go down the list? I have the list, I think. So Sharon, why don't you go ahead? Can we unmute Sharon?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wow. First of all, we absolutely have to help these businesses, and we have to help New York City. We have to do everything that we can as soon as possible. I hate to disagree with Sarah. It pains me to do so, but I don't even want an expedited process. I really feel as if when we have people that propose these initiatives, and we know that they believe that this can be helpful to small businesses, we have to help the small businesses. And we have to help New York City. New York City has got to get back up off of its knees right now. We're a city that is where we are right now. I mean, this is the reality. And Andrew is right. A lot of these businesses are going to cease to exist. So let's just vote on this. Let's just support this and continue doing what we can, everything that we can for small businesses.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Michelle, why don't we unmute Michelle?
Give me 1 second. I got to find Michelle.
Okay.
There you go.
Michelle?
Michelle, you have to push the button.
Yeah, I am. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. You know, I'm sorry as co-chairs of the vendor committee that we weren't included in this group, you know, that was Street Life and the Small Business Committee as being a partner to this, because vendors are clearly mentioned in this bill. Prior to the last full board meeting, I had reached out to our elected officials, the borough president, and send them copies of our past resolutions asking for citing for street vendors. And now, in terms of the crowding that's happening on the street, and we all know that we have clusters of vendors on individual streets, and I asked them to consider assigning spaces. With the new technology, where with renewals and new carts, there are now chips that are put on each of these carts. So in fact, the technology is there, but there's no programming or will to do this. In this bill, number 1957, vendors are mentioned. And they're mentioned in the sense that the same way that identifying restaurants in need are mentioned, and that the DOT will go ahead and look for spots and put out suggestions for where vendors should go and where restaurants should go. However, the fallacy, which is problematic with the bill, is they're calling for this, and from the time a restaurant or a vendor makes an application, they're supposed to have a solution within 5 days, which is terrific and commendable and speaks to our concerns about the speed of this. However, in the same bill, it says that it is with the consultation of the community. Well, the reality of it, there's really no way that from the point somebody makes an application to the point to 5 days later to have consulted with the community and the community giving input. So that's sort of a problem and a fallacy with the bill. In terms of some suggestions of what to do to benefit the restaurants, one of the solutions, I mean, I'm picturing a parking lane with, you know, which abuts a bus lane, and I'm picturing tables in that parking lane and these big buses coming back, and then your nose is about the height of their wheel. I mean, to me, not only is this disturbing from a safety point of view, but also fumes, et cetera, et cetera. So one suggestion that I have is, and Colleen could maybe address this, is there is such a thing as temporary bump outs. And they did use them, the DOT did use them when they wanted to do bus bump outs. I don't know if they come in all different sizes, if they're modular. I mean, I'll leave that detail to DOT, but that could be a possibility to put those in strategic places temporarily. This is only supposed to go until October 31st, unless there's a definite need to extend it. But to put that so that if you were extending the sidewalk, you were at least putting people on sidewalk level. They're up a few inches, as opposed to sitting down in the street with a bus wheel passing by their nose. I don't know what a good idea it would be to have it on the side street if you have a restaurant in the middle of the street, now sending waiters with trays of food, walking a half a block and around the corner. That's sort of a little difficult logistic. I mean, I don't know really how that would happen. My other suggestion is on streets like 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue, some places on First, but there are a lot of restaurants that are in a row. In other words, one after another. And maybe they can use each other's spaces and actually have this outdoor extension every other day. Like, let's say 2 or 3 restaurants abutted each other. They gave the other restaurants their outdoor space and say one would use it, you know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other would use it Tuesday, you know. Granted, they'd all be fighting over Saturday night or whatever, but these days with everybody working at home, it makes no difference if it's Saturday night anymore. So I think those are maybe a couple of suggestions, but I'm very concerned about the process. I don't really see how the community can have input with the time frame that's proposed in the bill. And yet I think the time frame that's proposed in the bill is a good one, because it makes the issue addressed quickly, you know, within 5 days. But it seems to me that as a community board, we should probably do some kind of email blast asking which restaurants would be interested in this, because if we've never taken that kind of an inventory, we really have no idea. And maybe then have the opportunity to look at their space, see how it works with us. And then as they make their application with the city, we will at least have some knowledge about this and be able to weigh in. So those are a few of the things that I'm concerned about. And I really don't know how it's going to be solved. But those are some suggestions.
Thank you, Michelle. Let's go to Barbara Rudder. Can we unmute Barbara?
Okay, I'm on your minute. Well,
Yeah, you're on.
I not only agree that we need to help our small businesses, I think we need to help us. I think many people, including me, can't wait to sit down and meet with a friend and sit at a table and be served dinner. Like, I think we'll know that we're starting to heal when that happens. I had a suggestion. I was walking today. There are so many closed stores. I don't mean just this last 3 months, but I mean for years, stores have been closed, and also so many empty lots where buildings were raised. I was on 85th between 2nd and 1st. When you think of just that property, that's all the way around. Why can't we use that? Would solve so many problems. We wouldn't be using parking spots. We wouldn't be using streets. And the idea, yes, the waiter may have to walk a half a mile. Well, if you go to Paris or Eastern European countries, that's what they do when they share it. So on 85th between 1st and 2nd, there's, I think, at least 4 restaurants that can use that space along the way. Now, I know there's insurance problems, you know, but that can be solved. I think we could say that it may be something like the restaurants are renting it or something to do so that the building themselves are not responsible for it. And you also would have more room. The parking spots, I don't know if a restaurant could survive if it's another 2 or 3 tables. This would give them many more tables and much more room, and maybe make these ugly lots more festive to look at.
Thank you, Barbara. Maybe some private property issues there, but thanks. Something.
Oh, it's a sidewalk. Is it a private property if it's a sidewalk?
Not the sidewalk, no, but we're not talking about, you were talking about the empty lots.
No. I'm talking about the sidewalks by the empty lots. I'm talking about using that in, not this empty lots. No, you can't use the empty lots. I'm talking about the sidewalks.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. I don't know what, okay, that's something to be looked at. Next is Felice Ferber. Barbara, sorry. Felice? Can we unmute Felice, Will?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate what others are saying and reinforce it, that I really support finding a way to support our businesses. The one question that I have is, with so many restaurants on the Upper East Side and so many bars, how do you make space for every one of them? How do you choose which ones? If you're doing it at a side street similar to what is in Lower Manhattan, how do you pack them all in on one street? Just some issues to think about as the legislation is moving forward. I
Yes,
just want to bring that up.
I think you're right. Those are all issues that have to be grappled with. I agree. Elaine Walsh, can we unmute Elaine?
You did skip Billy. I don't know if you meant to. Sorry.
Billy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to slight you, Billy.
No slight taken. I don't think. So I have a couple comments and then a question for Colleen. The first comment is just looking at the legislation, because I think there was some conversation earlier about whether this is putting it on the plate of the community to decide what locations we want. So the bill says that the DOT shall identify open spaces that are suitable. There is a provision saying that they must, consult with us if we, contact them saying certain locations should be utilized. But I think it's an important distinction, because it's not as if we are burdened with identifying places. At the end of the day, it's on DOT to think this through. The second comment is, I've been speaking with the owner of the mansion about this, and I feel like it's relevant to mention because there was a question of, well, have we talked to our neighborhood small businesses? And I just want to get their view exactly verbatim, which was the devil's in the details, but on a wholesale level, it could be beneficial. So I think there's a feeling that in principle, it's a good idea, at least that's one business that would be affected over at 86 in York. So something to keep in mind. And then my question for Colleen. So I support this idea. I think it's really going to be important, not just for our small businesses, but for enabling social distancing. But Colleen, does DOT have the capability to put in temporary bus lanes or temporary bike lanes, essentially moving one or both over by a lane in any given area? It strikes me as that's going to clearly be necessary here on 2nd and 1st Avenue. And, I would like to believe that DOT can do that. Candidly, I've been a little discouraged by, our inability to put in many temporary protected bike lanes during this crisis. So I'm wondering, how should we look at DOT's ability to do this? Are you confident it can be done, or is that going to be a logistical hurdle?
Can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry, Colleen.
Look, the DOT is a remarkable agency, and we can pretty much do anything we want to do.
Can I quote you on that, Colleen?
Yeah, you can.
Somebody write that down. Somebody write that down.
Here's a story. So we have been working with community boards 4, 5, and 6 on another protected bike lane. I'm sure you've heard of 38th and 39th Street protected bike lane, where we did not get the opportunity to make the permanent improvements. But right now we've made some temporary modifications where we have barrels. We're coning off the area with barrels to create the protected bike lane. And in the future, and within the next few months, hopefully when all gets settled, we'll go out there and we'll make sure that it becomes permanent. In terms of making adjustments, if it's a bus lane or a bike lane, I'd have to say, yes, we can look into that, making the adjustments with the bike lane. It might be much easier as opposed to a bus lane, because keep in mind, we'd have to work with another agency on, that bus route and determine whether it's feasible that we can make those changes. So, I mean, personally for us with a bike lane, we can do that. We can definitely do that with cones and with signage. But again, with the bus lane, we would have to work with the MTA on that to get their input.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Next is Elaine Walsh. Can we unmute Elaine? You there, Elaine?
Elaine, you have to push the button to confirm. Elaine.
maybe, I don't know if Elaine, I don't see her there. I don't know if she stepped away. Why don't we skip it? We'll come back to Elaine then.
Okay.
Elizabeth Rose.
I got it.
Oh,
You got me?
Elaine's here. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good, finally. I, Michelle and Valerie have said, my concern is this has not been thought through with looking at unintended consequences. One side of the avenues has bike lanes and bus lanes. Another side doesn't. So we have to weigh who is benefiting, who isn't. I think in reference to the vendors, I've been out and I'm very upset that the vendors are back out, the food vendors. How do we do social distancing? They are unfairly competing with our brick and mortar stores. The other issue is there's no enforcement. I live on 79th. I have Eli's on 79th and 3rd that is illegally has an outdoor space. Sojin is out there selling liquor off the sidewalk. You know, what I understand, look, I have a brother who lost their business after 35 years. I understand the issues of small businesses, but I do think that we need to look at whatever the plan is, what are the consequences for that? On a side street, you have restaurants, but you have people living above them. So at what hour are we going to cease service? And so I'm really concerned and do not want to move forward on stuff unless it's been played out. We have a very mixed community, first and second. You know, I hear the complaints. Oh, the people are out there drinking too late. The reality is for these restaurants, the money they will make is from the bar. And so if we close the businesses at 8 o'clock at night or 9, when do people go out to the bars? So I just think we need to be very cautious as we move forward and look at all the different stakeholders that are involved. And so I'm very hesitant to move forward with these, putting restaurants, tables on the street. We also have major zoning issues. Are we going to waive the zoning? And then when it's over, oh, well, it's been happening, screw the zoning, which is what does happen in our neighborhood. So I just say I'm very cautious about where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Let me get Elizabeth Rose next. Elizabeth, can we unmute Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'm here. Elaine, I appreciate your concerns. I feel almost exactly the opposite, which is that if we want to save the local restaurants and the small businesses in our community, we are going to have to act swiftly. We are going to have to act in ways that make us a little bit uncomfortable, but that it is a long-term, it is a short-term discomfort for a long-term benefit, which is that we retain the small businesses and the restaurants in our community. And frankly, the ability to go out for dinner in our neighborhood restaurants, I think is one of the great values of this community board area. I feel very strongly at the same time that I don't want us to be in a position where we have to decide who wins and who loses. These are all of these businesses need help. All of these businesses are community. So I would hope that there are a few, very few clear-cut guidelines, such as there must be X number of feet of sidewalk access, to build on a question that I think Judy Schneider raised earlier this evening. And that every business be effectively treated equally, that the rights be effectively the same as long as they meet whatever the very minimal guidelines are for pedestrian access or the number of tables that can be placed in a certain number of square feet. But if we don't move swiftly and in a very highly simplified fashion, this will have no impact. And I think we need to have impact.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I see one member of the public that I wanted to take, Denise Levine. Will, if Denise is still there, could you unmute Denise? Denise, rather.
Denise, yeah.
Hello?
Denise, yes. Please, go ahead.
Hi. I'm concerned because I'm getting a backlog. My sister-in-law almost died of COVID-19, so I've become very concerned about the issue of social distancing. I would like to see us having a normal life, but at the same time, I don't want us to jeopardize anyone's health. Now, I put this comment on the blog for Next Door New York, and people said that a few young people suggested that I move or stay indoors. And I think that that was a poor comment because from what I've read, over 40% of the city's confirmed coronavirus cases were people up to age 44. The only difference is that the rate of death is higher among the elderly. So I think that there's no real practical way to enforce social distancing because people are going to congregate as they're doing now. I mean, we've seen that. I think all of you have read articles in the New York Times, in the local papers, that there is no social distancing and a lot of people are not wearing masks. So you're going to have a conglomeration of people seated in the cafe, pedestrians who stop to talk to people in the cafe, people waiting to be seated in the cafe, and people were waiting for food pickup. So that concerns me. The other thing is I live on 2nd Avenue between 77th and 78th, and there are 3 lanes of traffic, plus a bus lane, plus the bicycle lane and parking. I don't see how a waitress is going to be able to go into the parking lane or waiter without killing themselves by the people going through on bicycles. And if that does happen, if there is that danger, I mean, I'm wondering, is this city incurring additional liability for all of these potential pedestrian accidents? And are we creating health issues for our populace by encouraging them to congregate? Cuomo put a thing in play, a proposal today that said tables had to be 6 feet apart. And someone on the committee just said earlier that that would allow maybe 1 or 2 tables in a parking space. So
Well,
I think that's true.
thank you, Denise. I think we don't want you to leave New York City. We'd like you to stay. So
I can't hear you.
Okay.
Jay,
We don't want you to leave New York City.
I can't hear.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. My husband took it off the TV, but now I can't hear.
Okay. All right. We can hear you, but thanks.
Oh, okay.
We can't hear. Okay. So costs, let's go to costs. Go back to the board. Is unmute cost?
Jay, I can't
Although I always like
put it on the TV. Sorry.
Gotta find her to.
Yeah, you should mute her. Okay.
Yes, now I hear. Yeah.
Costs? I see costs. Sorry. Is he unmuted?
Unmute.
All right, thanks. Why don't we stick to the facts rather than what's going to be going on in the next 6 months? The restaurants are hurting. We're talking about cafes. They're not going to be on the sidewalk. The sidewalk's going to be clear. DCA rules will still apply to the 8-foot clearance. You're not going to have tables all the way on the sidewalk and in the parking lane. They're just going to be in the parking lane. And as far as getting 2 parking spots, you're not going to be talking 1 or 2 seats. You're talking about in 2 space, what's a length, 10, 15 feet? So in 30 feet, you can get 5 tables, 5 on one side, 5 on the other. So let's be realistic. As far as Colleen saying that moving the bus lanes out, DOT, bus lanes don't go in the bus lanes. They're in the middle of the street now. They don't stick to the bus lanes. So why not move the bus lane one out from the parking lane, which would allow them to turn, allow them to go straight rather than wait for taxis to pull into the bus lane. So, you know, as far as being two agencies, that's really not very true. What else? As far as the hours, they're not going to be open all day, 24 hours. The rule now is 10 o'clock at night outside on a weekday and 12 weekends. They're going to still apply. You're not going to have people there 24 hours. So let's do it now rather than talk it to death. And it's not a permanent thing. We don't have to put concrete or barriers or anything for the moment. Temporary barriers will do. Just let the restaurants out there, let them get some more money coming in rather than let's, you know, blindfold them and handcuffs them and do whatever we do. But let's get this thing now. We're not designing it. We're just agreeing to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Cos. We're well spoken. Lowell Barton. Lowell, can we unmute Lowell? It's nice to see Lowell. Where is he?
Well, you'll have to push the button.
That work?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say that I have full confidence in Kalos and Powers. I have full confidence in the DOT. And I also have full confidence that we have to do everything that we can to keep these businesses going. They're our friends, they're our neighbors, they're the businesses that we love to go to, and we got to do anything and everything to help. And sometimes you just got to go in like a bull. Damn the torpedoes. Let's see what happens. I'm sure if a problem comes up, the problem will get fixed. But we have to fix this problem now. We have to support this bill. That's all I like to say.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Marco, can we unmute Marco?
Marco, you'll have to push the button.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say that I think Craig, he described very well the streetscape of our neighborhood. One. And two, we have a serious problems on First and Second Avenue. Hard to resolve because we have a very busy avenues with the bicycle lines. So my recommendation is let's go encourage all the business to come with own solutions, and they present it to us. And then we can figure it out if it's doable or not, because we cannot find that a solution that fit for all. Probably some of them they have a better choice than the other one. And then we can reach a good solution for each of them and we can keep moving forward. Otherwise, if we want to find that a consensus for all of them equally, it will be almost impossible for the description that I already said. So now that DOT is willing to collaborate with us, let's go do that. Let's go call the small business to present a solution, and then we discuss case by case. But with the condition that whatever solution they have, it has to be temporary. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Let me take Valerie. She's on the Small Business Committee too, and I know she wants to.
Yeah, I think, look, I maybe some people misinterpreted my opening remarks. We want to do whatever we can for our businesses. And I think what Marco was just saying, I think we need to hear more from what will really help our small business owners. I'm going to make, I don't know, when Congress passed PPP, they didn't ask small business what they needed first. They went ahead and they passed a law that gave almost no relief to small business, okay? So I would rather we have a little bit of time here because we're not open yet. I would really like to encourage the small business people out there to come to one of our meetings and tell us what they need with their business, because they know their business best. And I would encourage, if we're going to go forward with this, that somehow this be in the purview of the DOT in consultation with the community board, and the businesses in their community, because every community is going to be different and one size is not going to fit all. And if we have any way to do this, it's going to be on a business by business basis, working with our community and the DOT. Because I got to tell you, as the head of the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association, throughout this COVID crisis, I have been getting many complaints about bar restaurants who have not been complying with the law, okay? Who have been operating speakeasies and who have people on their sidewalk drinking. And it's not just the last 4 weeks, it's been through the entire length of the crisis till 4 a.m. in the morning. And we've had the 19th precinct going over to these two specific establishments. I'm not going to say their names right now, but when their licenses come up for renewal, I'm going to make sure that the people who have been coming and talking to me have their voices heard. But, you know, once we open the door here, we are not going to have the 19th precinct to pull everybody back in when people, they are not going to be able to enforce. So I would rather have each business come forward or each restaurant come forward and tell us what is going to work for them rather than trying to fix this with a huge Band-Aid approach. I think we would do better and working with the businesses in our neighborhood to try to fit it to what we need here. And we should be able to get that kind of latitude with whatever the legislation is. Because we all know that First and Second Avenue with bike lanes and bus lanes, by the time those bus lanes get redrawn, we'll all be retiring and moving out of New York, because that's not going to happen. And if we do want to help our small businesses and we want to react real time, and we still have time to hear from them and do that. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Thank you, Valerie.
Chuck, if I could just, for everyone's benefit, read from the proposed city council legislation, which I think addresses some of what Valerie was just mentioning. So in terms of identification of open spaces as defined in this bill, it says that no later than 7 days following the effective date of the law, DOT shall identify open spaces in each community district that are suitable for a temporary outdoor dining area. That may be actual open spaces as opposed to sidewalks. The Department of Transportation shall consult with any business improvement district, community board, or association representing food service establishment that contacts the department regarding a location that could be utilized for a temporary outdoor dining area. Such location shall be published online and updated at least once a week. And then in terms of notification, the department shall consult with and notify affected council members and community boards of an application for a temporary outdoor dining permit. So just so everyone has a sense of what we would be, how we would be brought into this process and the timing of the process if this bill were to pass.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig. I'd like to call on, we have one of our new board members who's new to the board, and actually this is his first transportation committee meeting, and I don't know if he survives this, maybe he'll be back for others. But I'd like to call on Brian Correa. Can you unmute Brian, Will?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Okay. So I agree. I think we have to support small businesses. I do agree about speaking, maybe having some type of like open session, town hall, whatever, with small business around this topic. I will say that, timing is of the essence here. Tomorrow, 7 regions in New York State enter phase 2 of the reopening plan, which includes outdoor dining. So we are entering phase 1 on Monday, the 8th. It's about 2 to 3 weeks before we go to phase 2. So if we are going to allow businesses to come in, it needs to be like within the next couple of weeks, because when we get to phase 2, restaurants are already going to be able to do outdoor dining at that point. So yes. I think if we're going to engage, small business owners, restaurants, it needs to be like soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Listen, there are some further speakers, but these are all people who've actually spoken before, but I think we ought to suggest a resolution. If I could, and maybe we ought to have a more generalized resolution now, and maybe before we have our full board meeting, we'll be able to get in touch with some of the restaurant organizations and others, and we may be able to get some further information about where, where people would like to do this, what they're talking about, et cetera. So by the time we get to the full board meeting, we need to change our resolution. We can based on getting further information. But is there, if anyone, Billy's shaking his head. Billy, yeah, you're on the list anyway. Would you like to offer a resolution at this point?
Yeah, I was going to propose a resolution supportive of this legislation, but I wanted to suggest a few specific pieces I think should be in it, just to reflect some of the comments we received. So, for example, I think the resolution should mention, asking business owners to, maybe not serve somebody who, is not wearing a mask. I know that's part of the law, but I think we should mention that in the resolution because Denise raised that concern. And just general, compliance with laws generally, I think, we want to reiterate that in resolution. I think Chuck, you sort of maybe suggested this, and it goes to Brian's point a bit. If the resolution can speak to a process for suggesting that our restaurants in the neighborhood will come forward, or other, bars, restaurants, whatever, come forward to us, establish a process for sort of getting on our radar as being interested. I think that would be an important piece for us to include. And then just one other thing is, I agree with Elizabeth's point earlier that sort of picking winners and losers is tough. So I came in this meeting liking Ben's proposal, but I don't think it's worth it for us to suggest specific streets. So what I'm thinking on this is something along the lines of, in support of local restaurants, CB8 supports legislation to allow rapid new sidewalk cafe license approvals and access to street space, including parking spaces as determined appropriate by DOT, as long as a clear pedestrian sidewalk lane is maintained and other social gathering and distancing guidelines are followed. Thank you, Elizabeth, for suggesting that language. So I think that's sort of the thrust of the resolution I would propose, but it would be broadly supportive of this legislation and have language calling on our neighborhood businesses to come forward to us.
Is there a second for that? I see Rebecca Dangor, she has her, and also Lori Boris. Thank you. Further, Sharon, is there, okay, further discussion? We have other people I know who want to say something, but at this point, Sharon, did you want to say anything? Will, can we unmute Sharon?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm here. No, I support the resolution overall, and that was the one that was proposed by Billy. So I'm okay with that. I don't have any further comments.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Michelle? Can we unmute Michelle?
No, I just wanted to say that in the legislation, the wording also says in accordance with the current zoning. So it specifically says that. So I don't want to have any wording that says, and Billy's didn't, to go around the corner on a side street or here or there because the zoning doesn't support it. And if the resolution is supporting the zoning, I certainly support the zoning. I would be supporting it even if it didn't. So Billy sort of faded out when he was talking, so I didn't hear the the bulk of his. So when we come to a vote, I really need him to read it clearly.
Yes, thank you.
Can I just clarify that the legislation, and as Michelle said, does refer to zoning, but that is only for sidewalks. So basically what the legislation is saying is that if a sidewalk is zoned for the use of a sidewalk cafe, or a street is zoned for potential sidewalk cafes, it would be permitted, but that doesn't speak to something that would take place on the curbside within the street itself.
No, but I think logic would suggest that you wouldn't have a sidewalk cafe out on the other side in the street next to a sidewalk, which was not zoned for a sidewalk cafe. So I mean, I'm not reading it the way you're reading it. I think that it means in accordance with the zoning, and I think we should respect that.
I'm not sure about that because.
Well, let's not get into a whole thing.
Well, we're not putting that in a resolution, but I want this resolution to be as broad as possible, and with the opportunity for the community to comment on it. I mean, the DOT is given an awful lot of responsibility here to go out and find locations. So I think that, I mean, in the past, I know they were also asked at one point with a city council bill to go out and find locations for vendors. The DOT wanted no part of it, and I can't say I blame them. So I'm not so sure that tasking them with something like this citywide really makes much sense. But certainly, I think there should be an opportunity for a restaurant to know that this program exists and then come to the community board and or the DOT and ask for it. And then we look at it and then we can comment. And if it's done that way, it can be done within the time frame that they're talking. They're saying that it goes into effect 7 days after the legislation is passed, but that the temporary license will go into effect 5 days after the application if the applicant is suitable. So that whole 5 days span is a very short time to involve the community. So I think we have to wait for them to come to us so that we know something about them, because we know what they're asking for. Why should we be voting on something to give them if that's not what they're asking for? And it won't be a one size fits all for every business.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Elaine, I want to take just, and then let's get to, I think we ought to vote on Billy's resolution after Elaine has, because I know she wanted to say something. So can we unmute Elaine?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is moving fast, but there are concerns by other businesses that are now paying the license fee for outdoor cafes. And the question will be, do the new groups have to pay it? And I know state liquor authority said they would move quickly on some licensing, but all of this has to be taken into consideration with the zoning, because you are going to get businesses that say, wait a minute, I'm paying X. What's the process that my neighbor next door has? That's all I have to say is we be very careful in moving forward. And if I can, and it's out of order, I'd call the question right now.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. That's not out of order. You were gonna be the last person. Billy, would you state and speak? Turned your head and I think people couldn't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Apologies.
That's
Which part do I need? Which part do I need to clarify?
Just state the resolution so everybody, why don't you go ahead and state what your resolution says as well as you can.
Okay, sure. So CB8 supports the legislation to allow rapid new sidewalk cafe license approvals and access to street space, including parking spaces, as determined appropriate by DOT, as long as clear pedestrian sidewalk lanes are maintained and other social gathering, social distancing guidelines are followed. The resolution would also have language urging or requiring neighborhood businesses that participate to not serve anyone who is not in compliance with the laws and guidelines regarding social distancing and wearing of masks. It would also have a provision calling on restaurants and bars and anyone else to come forward to request to be included in this program, just to come forward to CB8 and go through an expedited process of getting on our radar so that we can consult with DOT.
Okay, why don't we?
And if I may say, Chuck, I mean, look, when I thought about this resolution, I want to be consistent with the legislation on zoning, Michelle. I kind of agree with Craig's interpretation. I don't think we should go beyond what the legislation says on zoning, which I think is explicitly contemplating, the sidewalk cafe piece of it.
All right, we'll clarify that. Okay, why don't we at this point vote, and will be considered a yes vote. Everyone will be considered yes. Those who do not want to vote yes or would like to vote no or abstention or anything else, not voting for cause, raise your hand, press the raise hand. We have some raised hands.
And
I know
again,
we're speaking, but we're
and
voting
again,
now.
if you could just allow me a moment to just read the names of those who are present at this moment and voting on this. So we have myself, Rita, Sharon, Michelle, Billy, Chuck, Abraham, Barbara Rutter, Barry, Brian, hold on, just scrolling down. Kaz, Elaine, Elizabeth Rose, Felice, Gail, Jack, Lori, Lowell, Marco, Rebecca Dangor, Sharon, and Valerie. If I
If
missed
there's
it,
if there's anyone else that's on the phone, because there's somebody on the phone, raise your hand by hitting *9 and we'll unmute you. I don't think that they are, though.
Okay, so everyone will be presumed a yes. If you want to vote no, abstain, or not voting for cause, press the raise hand symbol so it'll come up by your name. We have I see Rita Popper and Michelle. I don't know if that's right, but is there anybody else in Elaine?
Elaine. So I'm going to start with Michelle. Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the bill says in reaction, I want you to have this information. There is no fee for this. So you will have people who pay fee for their sidewalk cafe. This temporary license does not have a fee attached to it. So I'm a little concerned about this bill, the way it's written, because I would also want, I don't want to say we support the bill. I would rather say what we are supporting, because I would like to see a temporary relief of the fees for those restaurants that are paying. So rather than say we support the bill as a friendly amendment, I would rather just say what it is that we're looking for. So to that extent, I'm going to abstain.
Okay, abstain. Thank you. Is Elaine, who else is we have? Elaine?
Okay, I agree with Michelle. I think there are too many unknowns here. And so I'd rather abstain until I really understand what the intentions are of the city.
Okay. Do we have anything else, Will? Anyone else who's raised their hand? I know that I think Rita was there.
I think Rita had her hand up for a question earlier and she lowered it.
Okay. But is there anyone?
And she sort of gave a nod, yes. So
who wants to vote something other than yes? Okay. No.
Valerie. Valerie raised her hand.
Valerie,
Yeah,
do you want?
I'm going to abstain too to the main vote. I want to look at a couple more things, and I want to look at the legislation again.
Sure, Valerie, abstention. Okay. Rebecca, Rebecca Dangor, I saw. Were you meaning to vote differently? No. Okay. Okay. So I think, thank you, everyone. And one of the things we wanted to do, and I think something that Brian had mentioned, and I was thinking of whether or not we have our full board meeting in 2 weeks. I think we ought to reach out to the organizations that represent different restaurants and contact them. And we may, if we can, we may want to have some kind of a forum about this in the neighborhood. And you know, maybe we can do that before our board meeting. We'll do it obviously on Zoom, but and get maybe as much input. And then I want to look at some of these other questions that have been raised about the legislation, and to see whether there are any other things that people have concerns about in the legislation itself. But thank you, everyone.
And just so everyone knows, tomorrow night, the board is co-sponsoring with a number of the neighborhood associations and business improvement districts in the neighborhood, a webinar for local businesses on reopening. It's the first of a series. And so we'll be sure to flag this at some point in that meeting, so that if there are any that are looking for outdoor seating space, that they should reach out to us. We can.
Yeah, good. And maybe we'll try to see if we can put together something on that, just so, because there seem to be, a number of concerns, but they get down into the nitty gritty here. Well, thanks, everybody. Then number 3 is an update on the streets previously requested or implemented, and that we had passed a resolution on Park Avenue. This is to open the streets, or implemented, and then they implemented they didn't ask us particularly on this, East End Avenue. And Colleen, maybe you can tell us if there's any update on that at this point, or Craig, I don't know if you have anything thing you want to say about this first?
I mean, I don't have any update on that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So just briefly, so East End Avenue has now been an open street for a month. Given that I live on East End Avenue, I can just report that things seem to be going very smoothly, aside from nights like tonight when we have massive vigils in front of Gracie Mansion that close the open street to everyone. But beyond that, I haven't heard anyone complain in my building or anywhere around here. People seem to coexist with vehicles that have to pass through pretty comfortably. It provides the space needed for people to be able to walk in a socially distant manner. It is not overcrowded. It's certainly less crowded than Carl Schurz Park is on nice days, because the crowding there is potentially an issue with the way that people have been congregating there. So that's just East End Avenue here. And as I've said before, it's more of a shared street where activity can still take place. So I just want to make sure that it's understood how it actually functions. And then in terms of Park Avenue, if we could unmute Valerie, if she's willing to speak. I know she spoke with Borough Commissioner Ed Pinkar about Park Avenue, and she has an update based on what Ed has said.
Valerie, why don't we unmute Valerie?
Thank you. Well, I spoke with Deputy Commissioner Pinkar, and he basically said that it would be impossible to close Park Avenue from 8 to 8 every single day. I think the resolution said from 60th Street to 96th Street. And he said that it would be, we need to propose something a little bit better or more compact. So so that being said, and I have to echo what Craig is saying, East End Avenue works very well. I've been out there a lot, and cars are permitted at 5 miles an hour. Everybody knows how it's going. It's working, and Craig, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see any police there at all, and everything seems to be running very smoothly. I don't live on East End Avenue, so I don't know about deliveries, but it seems to be fine. But I really think that having at least some of Park Avenue open some of the time would be a real needed sort of, open valve to have people be able to go out and be out there. Because I don't think we really have enough alternatives on the Upper East Side. So I wasn't at the first board meeting where this was proposed, but I think we should go back with another proposal for Park Avenue, and I'm happy to entertain what other people are saying, but at least I would say it should be open Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 7 p.m. and on Saturday and Sunday. And I think that would go a long way as we make our way through whatever phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 are, to alleviate, and not only alleviate, but give people an idea that the city belongs to them and that they can move around freely. And whether they use it or not, just having that alternative, I think and giving people another place to go, because quite frankly, there aren't that many places to go. So I've spoken enough and like to hear what other people have to say.
Okay. Any further comments on this at this point? Okay. I mean, Valerie, what I might suggest is we have maybe next month, if we're going to take that up, we'll give people notice, and if you have a proposal you want to make, we can put it on the floor for next month. Okay, thanks everybody. Final item before we have a new business item. I know that.
Wait, excuse me, Chuck. We had the other part of this item was also before new business was proposal for new open streets.
Right. Yeah, that's item 4. I just meant we're going to have new business after that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you then.
Yeah, 4 4 is request for additional open streets within community board aid. And I don't know whether we talked about that, but we haven't had any specific proposals particularly. Craig, you want to?
I haven't heard back. So we had sent out from the board office an email to all the neighborhood associations and business improvement districts within the neighborhood. Those organizations that the DOT has indicated as part of the Open Streets program would be the ones that would tend to manage open streets that are not associated with parks, adjacent park space. Will, I assume we did not hear back from anyone?
No.
No. So we wanted to put that out there in terms of looking at other opportunities. We didn't want to, especially in light of how the Park Avenue discussion took place, we want to make sure that if anyone is interested in pursuing any additional open streets, that we had a formal process in place where either it was proposed at our meeting and then we could discuss it at a future meeting where it's noticed and people are more aware of it, or that it was an organization that was making the request and showing interest. So that's where we are with that. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on open streets in general and wishes to propose anything for a potential future discussion, but I just want to allow that opportunity to exist.
Michelle, you had a comment. I saw. Why don't we unmute Michelle? Will?
Michelle.
Yeah, I do have a comment. I'm happy to hear that anything proposed today won't be discussed until it's properly posted and discussed at a future meeting. As you know, that I am opposed to closing streets to vehicular traffic. I think that people, I've told you this before, I'm not going to elaborate on it, but for those who this is the first time at a meeting to hear me, I think that it just calls people to gather in one place. I think it's contradictory to social distancing. I don't think it serves a benefit. I think if you go to quiet streets, you're all welcome to come and walk on Park Avenue and in the street on Park Avenue whenever you want. You don't need a formal closing. However, if I know that I am a minority here, and if this board wants to have closed streets, or you call them open streets, if that is going to be something, then I would like to propose that you choose from the following streets that I'm going to mention. That's 74th Street between 1st and 5th, 78th between York and 5th, 80th between East End and 5th, 87th between East End and 5th, 88th between Park and 5th, 89th Street, York to the east side of Lex, 90th between East End and 5th, 91st between York and 5th, 93rd between 1st and 5th, and it was 88th between Park, west side of Park and 5th. I have chosen these streets because I think that the community board should bear some of the pain if they are going to vote on open and closed streets for others. And I stayed out of the hospital corridor completely. I stayed away from the drive, entrances and exits, and I stayed away from all the crosstown. But these are streets on which community board members live. They are perfectly viable, and I'm not recommending that you close them because I will vote against any closure. But if you are going to choose and make a proposal, I think that you should propose these. I'm going to try to cut and paste them, or I'll send an email afterwards. If you're not voting today, then I'll send an email afterwards. Letting you know which, giving you the list of these. But I think as a courtesy to the community, you should go to your own backyards first.
I thought that's what they were, community board members. Thank you. That's fine. It's fine with me, frankly. But all right. I don't think at this point, I don't think there's anything we're going to be voting on this issue. Colleen just left for a minute. I wanted to get her to see if there are any updates. When she comes back,
we do have other members who have had their hand raised, I assume, on open streets. So I see Barbara Rudder has her hand up, and so does Billy and Valerie.
Okay, Valerie. Okay, Valerie was. Yeah, we talked before. Okay. I thought Valerie had already spoken, but anyway.
Am I the first mention? Should I speak?
No, you go ahead.
I'm just frustrated by the slowness. We're not having another meeting for a month. You know, it's time to do it. We need to get out. The weather is nice and we need to get out. I happen to think that Michelle's idea of side streets, not because we should share the pain. I don't think that Craig is feeling pain because East End Avenue is I'll call it open, and I wouldn't consider East 87th Street, which is my street, pain. But I do think that we need more streets. I think we need to share the streets, and I'm frustrated by this is the second item that we have to wait for a while, and time is ticking, and we need it now. And I guess you can't vote on something now, but I'm finding it frustrating. We already voted on Park Avenue. I don't know if an amendment would be anything, or just saying, well, DOT, if you don't like from 60th to 96, choose something else, or something like that. We've already, it's on the agenda. We've already voted on it. I'm not sure what we're waiting for. Hopefully be to a point where we won't need to do it, when everything will be healthy and we won't need to do it anymore.
Billy, you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead. Unmute Billy.
Yeah, well, first, I thank Michelle for putting in the work of identifying some streets, because while I will rephrase it a bit, I think, yes, the rest of the community district should enjoy the pleasure of having, open streets, especially at this time. But I do think if we're going to pursue it, we should take these things separately. And I like what Valerie was saying earlier. And I would be happy to propose a resolution that is more narrow on Park Avenue, because we already discussed this and passed this as a full board. And I think it would be appropriate to look at 60th Street to 72nd. That is, I shot Valerie an email and she mentioned that. And if that's still consistent with Valerie's feeling, it's completely appropriate to me. So I would propose a resolution calling on, an open streets approach on 60th to 72nd. And again, I think what I heard Valerie say earlier was Saturdays and Sundays, 10 to 7. I would be open to having this during the week as well, but I'm kind of looking to Valerie whether you and others have an appetite for that, because I think our original resolution contemplated it being, during the week from something
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so I think during the week, 8 to 8. And then during the weekend, those hours of 10 to 7 seem appropriate to me.
Valerie, would you say 60th to 72nd, Valerie? I don't know. What did you say? I thought it was more than that. Can we unmute Valerie?
I actually didn't give the streets, but I'm happy to say 60 to 72. I'm not looking to open all of Park Avenue. I'm looking to see this as I think the DOT is doing. This is an experiment, and this is, we're trying to get the streets open. To Barbara's point, we need to act sooner rather than later. I guess I was under the misimpression that we were actually going to pass a resolution, because I think if we pass a resolution tonight, whether it's amending the first resolution or just putting a new resolution out there, putting a little bit more of a governor around it, I think we can consider this at our next full board meeting and notice the public. And if the public wants to get on and talk about it, then that's, the public session is for that. And I think we need to do this now, because we're going to lose, the more streets on the Upper East Side, the better. And I think, with all, Michelle and I have talked about this. I think if you go over to East End Avenue, Craig can speak about it even better because he lives there. I don't think it's a pain. I see the children on their scooters and, with their parents, and it gives them more open area. And why Park Avenue is great for this is that it's so wide. So it can even handle even more people. To put this on a side street, I think defeats the purpose of the open street character. It's a beautiful boulevard and it should be shared by all, especially in a time where people are depressed. Let's face it. We just had 1,000 people walk through 72nd Street right now. We need something uplifted, and we should be sharing our best public spaces, street and sidewalk. And this is a great opportunity for the Upper East Side to do that, and this community board to do that. So I would say I'm in favor of Billy's resolution. Let's do it now. And let's get it going. Thank you.
Billy,
So I'll just say, I don't typically have a high pain threshold. I don't feel any pain with East End Avenue. I take advantage of it frequently, and I've seen other community board members and members of the committee using it on a somewhat regular basis. So I know that it's being well utilized and seems to be popular. The other recommendation or suggestion I have possibly is, given that I think when we originally were talking about open streets, we weren't aware that side streets would really be an option and that DOT would permit them. But we've since seen that DOT has implemented open streets in other community districts on cross streets. Upper West Side comes to mind. I forget if it's 74th or 75th Street from Broadway to Riverside has been converted into an open street as well. So now that we have the possibility, the other thought I had is if we wanted to pass a more open-ended resolution regarding side streets and saying if DOT has any side streets in mind that they see as potentially viable for open streets, that we would be open to it. And we can give a list of potential streets if we wanted to. But again, just like we did with the last resolution, if the onus is on DOT to do it, and they believe it would be feasible, that would be, I think, a home run for us in being able to get it done relatively quickly.
so Billy, your resolution is from Park Avenue from 60th to 72nd, 8 to 8 on the weekends?
Look, what I want to propose is I want to include weekdays. I mean, I want to include 8 to 8 on weekdays. I mean, East End Avenue is open on weekdays. And then, I don't really see a reason to have different weekend hours, but I mean, if we want to say 10 to 8, I'm fine with that. So let's say 10 to 8 on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's what I would propose.
And during the week, you're saying 8 to 8, is that it?
Yeah.
Valerie, do you want to second that? You said you supported it. Is there a second?
Wait, I just wanted to say, sorry, I couldn't get myself unmuted fast enough. While I appreciate what you're saying, Billy, I don't think that, Colleen's I don't think that's going to make it. I don't think weekdays are going to make it. And I would really like to have this pass rather than fail. And I think.
Sorry, Valerie, but we've passed this before. I think the board will pass it. If DOT decides just to do half of what we're asking for, fine, but you don't get what you don't ask for. And I think.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Colleen is here. She's listening to the discussion. So she knows that we're doing this, full boat, but we're happy to take less, okay?
Yeah, look, I view this, this issue sort of has had a complicated evolution where we passed something overwhelmingly. DOT received some number of emails. We weren't really told how much. That I think slowed down some of the progress that could have been made. But I think, we have every right to kind of want to reiterate our interest here. And we're already making a significant compromise by saying we'll limit it to 12 blocks. So I feel comfortable with.
Okay, I'm seconding.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of Billy? Can we have the language be a little flexible where we have something where we talk about our top priority being or our request being everything, but we will accept weekends only if DOT finds weekdays to be too disruptive or something?
Look, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't do it that way. Here's what I would do. I would say, let's have a request for the weekend hours, and then let's have, a therefore, or the second therefore clause that asks for the weekdays, and maybe we can make the language a little bit, weaker. But I don't like that we're sort of, negotiating out in the open here and basically signaling that we're willing to not take, weekdays.
What if we did an A and B piece like we did the first resolution, where A would be weekdays and B would be weekends? You can feel free to say no. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
figure out how we can.
I would say no, because I think we usually do that when we're worried that one piece might pass and the other might not. I think
Okay,
here is
fair
the
enough.
way to support both.
We can word it, we'll check with Billy, we can word it. Gail Barron we have some people who want to comment on this. Gail Barron wanted to be recognized. So can we unmute Gail?
Gail, you're unmuted.
Gail, you okay there?
Oh,
You have
Gail, try
to,
that again.
She's remuted.
you have to unmute yourself, Gail. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
did. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I agree with Billy. I think that we really need areas where people can have an outlet. I live across the street from Central Park and it gets more and more crowded every day. So I really do think that it's a great idea to go ahead and we've shortened the street length on Park Avenue, but I think we should ask for weekdays as well as weekends. And I also have a question for Colleen. How is it working on West End Avenue? Have you had any complaints or any difficulties there?
She's shaking your head no. I guess you can.
Actually working out really well. And the location Craig mentioned, we haven't had any complaints about that as well.
Thank you.
More comments. Sharon, comment? Can we unmute Sharon?
Yes, hi.
Go ahead, you're on.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Is there a resolution on the floor? Because if there's a resolution on the floor, I'd like to call a question. Because I thought that Billy had a resolution. No, yeah. Is there a resolution on the floor? Because I thought I heard one.
Yes, there is a resolution on the floor, yes.
Okay, I'd like to call a question on that resolution.
We do have two more.
We have Elizabeth Rose and Rebecca.
Unless they're trying to call the question also, which is possible.
If they have other things to say, why don't we just see Elizabeth Rose? Why don't we just, Sharon, hold off a sec. And
Okay, you got it.
Elizabeth is usually short and to the point. Elizabeth Rose, can we?
Wow, thank you. I like that reputation. I feel like we're negotiating against ourselves. I feel like we have not really heard from DOT whether there are what the specifics are that they feel is unviable about the prior resolution and what it is they're really looking for from us. Because I appreciate the notion of less, but less could be in a whole bunch of different directions. And so I feel like we're negotiating against ourselves. I'd kind of like to really put this on DOT and say, you know, tell us what you're not going to agree to. We want all of this, you know, unless you give us specifics.
Yeah, Colleen, are we going to get a written response to our resolution?
Well, you know, I think the issue with the Park Avenue was that residents, they felt that they felt that DOT was proposing the entire closure of Park Avenue. They didn't realize it was a discussion or that it was a resolution that was passed by the community board. And with that, we were uncomfortable and we mentioned to the residents, like, listen, this is not a DOT proposal. This is something that the community board put together, and you know, you should have a conversation with the community board. So that's when Valerie had the conversation with Borough Commissioner Pinkar on this. I think if you have a specific area, as opposed to, you know, the entire corridor of Park Avenue, I think people will be willing to accept that. You know, with Billy and Valerie, they mentioned Park Avenue from 72nd to 60th Street. I think that's a good start with, and I don't see why not adding in the weekdays and weekends to see what is really feasible and what we can allow. I think that's a good idea to do that. I think people were afraid, or residents again were afraid, that they thought it was the entire corridor of Park Avenue that was going to be closed for open street. And I think they were, you know, they got really worried about that.
Elizabeth, I think if we, you know, in dealing with the DOT over the years, I think what Valerie had said first and what Colleen is saying makes sense, because this means this will give us a specific proposal. We're looking at it as a pilot. Doesn't mean we can't add more, but I think if that's successful, then we can have further discussion with DOT. Look about adding more, but I think that'll move the ball a lot.
I think we just got some very good feedback, and so I'm appreciative.
Thank you. Rebecca Dangor, you wanted to say something, right, Rebecca? Can we unmute Rebecca Dangor? Go ahead, Rebecca.
I do think that based on what I heard from Valerie in the beginning, that I do think 8 to 8 and 10 to 8, 7 days a week is still, it doesn't, to me, even if it's a smaller distance, it doesn't make, it's not enough of a difference from what we did last time. I think we should just stick to weekends for now, or make the time during a couple days of the week less. Because I think if people really want to get this passed, I don't think this is, or get it to happen, I don't think this is different enough. I think there still will be some blowback. Sorry, I'm also very tired.
Okay, thanks. That's okay. I think we should vote on this resolution. We'll try to get some further feedback on it, maybe before the board meeting. But so why don't we say that everyone will be considered a yes vote for everyone unless you put your hand up and indicate that you want to do something different. If you don't want to vote yes, please put your hand up, and it'll be no, abstain, or not voting for cause.
And again, let me just
see.
go through the list of members who are currently in attendance. Myself, Valerie, Michelle, Billy, Chuck, Abraham, Barbara Rutter, Brian, Elaine, Elizabeth Rose, Felice, Gail, Jack, Lori, Lowell, Marco, Rebecca, Rita, Sharon, and I believe that's it.
Okay, so we have Valerie. I know is your hand up. Do you want to vote other than yes on this? No, she doesn't. It's okay. So Michelle,
would you repeat the resolution one more time? Because there were a couple of people who asked me if they could be repeated. Sorry.
Billy, why don't you repeat the resolution, or I can repeat it. Why don't I repeat it? So this would be the closure of the streets, or the opening of the streets for pedestrian use, just pedestrian use, on Park Avenue from 60th to 72nd Street, from 8 to 8 during the weekdays and 10 to 8 during the weekends. Is that got your resolution, Billy?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. I hope everybody's got that. Okay, so Michelle, and how do you?
Valerie still has her hand up. Do you want?
Oh, I don't think Valerie's okay. You're yes on this, aren't you, Valerie? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, she's yes. So I think
your hand.
Michelle?
No.
Thank you.
You want to vote?
No. She said no.
Michelle's no. Elaine? Yeah. No.
Elaine,
what did Elaine say?
Yourself. Elaine,
you want to vote no or abstain? Can't hear you, Elaine.
You have to push the button to unmute.
Did. I'm fine. You hear me now?
Yes.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, so we have Michelle no, and Elaine abstain, and Marco. Can we unmute Marco?
Marco, you have to push the button again.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're okay,
okay.
Marco.
Okay, I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain. Okay, Marco abstain, and then did we have Rebecca? Did Rebecca Dangor? I thought I saw Rebecca. I don't know if I see her now, but
she popped up and then lowered her hand. So
okay. Okay. So anyone else? That I guess that's it. Will, we have everything? Craig, you got it?
Yeah,
I got it.
And you get it off.
Just rejoin the meeting, so I will assume she is a yes as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, Barbara Rutter, did you want to clarify your vote? Barbara, you have to push the button.
Forgot. Rebecca just texted me that she got disconnected, need to try to get back on, is what she said. So that's why she's not there.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what you just want to say? Okay.
That's
Okay,
all.
so let's,
You're very thorough.
how does Rebecca want it? Barbara, did you want to vote yes on this or something else? Or do
No.
you just talk?
Yes, yes,
to
yes,
Rebecca?
yes. Should I say
Yeah.
how do you? Let's see if she answers me quickly.
Raise your hand again if so, because I think there's a couple items of business left.
Yeah. All right, why don't we go on and see if we'll see how Rebecca wants to, if she comes back or if Barbara gets something. The DOT updates, Colleen, do you have anything for us here? Can we unmute Colleen? Yeah.
Other than that, we're just busy with open streets and working on the legislation to accommodate the restaurants to, have some space outside for their serving capacity, but nothing to report on. Again, I don't know when we're going to go back into the office. I have no idea. I'm still working remotely from home, getting emails and trying to review a lot of the open street requests that we're getting for the different community boards. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. We see your nice pictures on the wall.
Oh, do you? These are all pictures when I travel, just so you know.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so any new business? And I believe that Rita Popper said she had an item of new business. So can we unmute Rita? She wants something.
Yeah.
I know what she wants. It's deserved, but why don't you go ahead, Rita?
Yeah, and Barbara, if you have her vote, you can.
Yes, her vote is yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Thanks.
yes. Okay.
She's trying to redo it.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Can we unmute Rita? Rita, unmute yourself.
Yeah. 1 second, Rita. Now try.
Okay. Now unmute yourself and you can have the floor.
I have the perfect street for you.
There you are.
Nobody's going to find anything wrong with it except that it's broken. And Will, could you put up some of the pictures? Colleen
Yeah.
has been incredible in trying to get this fixed. It's 2 years. What it was is that it's the only closed street in our district, and here is what our street looks like. And what it was is that there was a sewer break up on 3rd Avenue and gravity ran down the hill, and all of these pavers have been lifted. And what it is that nobody wants to claim any to fix it. DEP, DOT, whatever it is. The owners of the buildings have said that if there are any pavers that are missing, they'll be willing to give them the pavers, but they have to find out why this is happening. This is 2 years. And somebody has fallen and somebody has sued RY management. All of this is cordoned off so that bicyclists no longer can go straight up the hill. They now use the sidewalk. So what I'm asking is, could we get all the agencies that are involved in this, DEP, DOT, and anybody else who could think, if they could all get in the room at the same time and tell us how they are going to fix it. We are not building the Taj Mahal. We are just fixing this portion of the street, but it's a very large portion. And during this pandemic, this street is very highly used. It's a bike lane. It has city bike at the bottom. So I need your help. Do I have it?
Thank you. Thank you. Colleen, can you comment on what seems to be the problem with this now?
So
Besides the bureaucratic.
hello, Rita. Rita brought this to my attention, I think, yeah, absolutely, about 2 years ago. And the issue is that there is some kind of underlying problem where water is coming from somewhere, and I have no idea where it's coming from. Anyhow, we've met a couple times at the site, and DEP went out there twice. I actually got DEP to go out there for a second time to do a dye test to see where the leak is coming from. The results were negative. There are no sewage issues under the roadway. Con Ed was also working at the site. Con Ed looked at the site, and there's no issue again. And I believe the building or the developer hired Sam Schwartz, because I was in communication with one of Sam Schwartz's staff about this location. And I had pleaded with DEP to go out there again for the third time to do another testing. And they went, and of course, nothing came back. To be honest with you, we don't have a maintenance agreement on this part of the roadway or the street where the pavers are. And it was mentioned that the next step would be for the developer to hire a private contractor to come out there and further look at this to see what is really the problem. And that was what we had requested. I mean, you can actually convene or have an interagency meeting, but all of the agencies are going to tell you that they've looked at this site and there's nothing that can be done. We can't even restore the pavers because the developer initially had put these pavers there, and it was not the DOT that did it.
But just to give you a little bit of background, is that when a bike lane was put on the street by Margaret Forgione, and we said, it's the only street, it's a place street, no bikes. And she said, if you don't allow the bike lane, I'm going to open up the street to vehicular traffic. It has been closed to vehicular traffic for 45 years. So, and as you all know, Dave and I worked on it. We got it officially named a DOT pedestrian plaza, the James Cagney Place. So it belongs to the DOT when they want it. It doesn't belong to the DOT when there's a problem. I have seen the results of that dye test. The dye came up on the top, but you know, if you don't want to see the dye, it didn't exist. The dye existed. This is not, there is no way that these buildings have the right to go into the city under, infrastructure. What would happen if they damaged it? It's not theirs. It happens from a sewer. Could we possibly get everybody in there? It's got to be an answer. This is only, look at the block. There's a whole block here. And yet we need open space and we can't use it.
Initially, the building did fix this. They had restored the cobbles, I remember. And when it was restored, the cobbles also sunk again, which means something is going on. I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting you, Rita, because something is going on under that roadway. And I'm not an engineer and I can't tell you what it is, but I did have DEP go out there 3 times and they didn't find anything. So that's why we had requested for the building to retain a private entity to take a look at this. The building even hired Sam Schwartz to look at this. And the engineer for Sam Schwartz agrees that something is going on underneath, that there is an issue with the roadway condition. But, again, DEP dye test keeps coming back negative. Negative.
I saw the dye test, Colleen. I saw it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to see the dye test, it doesn't happen. Something is going on
I think if you saw the dye test, I think this is something you need to take at raise it at another level with the elected officials, to see, you know, what intervention they can do. I mean, if you saw the dye test and the dye test says otherwise, then obviously something, as I mentioned, is going on. Or is happening below the subsurface of the roadway.
Rita, let's see if we can get a solution to this. It sounds to me as if the government agencies don't want to do anything, and maybe the private developer will do something, and maybe we ought to. You probably talked to them already, but maybe we can, as a community board, see if they'll get in and get somebody out there. Maybe you have to dig up that area and see what's going on down there.
Again, it's not that the government agencies don't want to do anything. They did. I mean, DEP looked at this 3 times and they didn't see anything. But Rita's saying that, you know, the dye test tells a different story. If that's the case, then I recommend that you get the elected officials involved, the council member, and, you know, have them do another, you know, have DEP review the dye test, sit down and review the dye test.
First, do we agree that there is a problem?
Yeah.
Rita, of course. Why don't we look? I don't think we're going to solve it here. Why don't we get together with Will and we'll try to see the best way to solve this? And I'll try to help out here. And I think we can get somebody. I think you're going to, you know, the best thing may be just to dig it up and see what's going on down there, and then repair the thing, and just do it.
And who is responsible for digging it up?
I think that's what we'll talk to DOT. If DOT won't take responsibility, then they're going to have to allow the private people to do it.
Yeah, we're not going to take responsibility for digging that space up, because if we do, and should anything happen, you know, and again, maintenance agreement for that space with the cobbles.
You have a maintenance agreement with them?
Well, no, we don't. There's no maintenance agreement, because I searched to see if we had a maintenance agreement on the James Cagney Plaza, and we don't.
Okay. All right. Well, Rita, I appreciate you bringing it to everybody's attention. Yeah. I know you've been working on it. Let's get together with Will and maybe we can figure out a way out of this. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. I think if there's no other business, I think we're.
Alita has her hand up. An opportunity to speak.
And Marco also raised his hand too.
Who did you say before, Alita?
Alita, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought Alita had left. Okay, well, of course, Alita, sure.
I did leave and I'm back and I'm going to leave again. And
Boy, you're a glutton for punishment.
I am. I'm surprised that you're on this late. That's what I was going to suggest. And I was going to ask Colleen is if the building does a test, the developer does a test and then works to repair it with the DOT put in writing that it assumes that it's going to allow the building to do that with all of the rights and responsibilities go with it, because you can have it both ways. You can't have it that it's yours when you want to and it's not yours when you don't. And that's all I was going to suggest. But I think Chuck and Will and Rita came up with, and Craig, the right solution, which is to bring everyone in and see where it's going to work. So I will butt out now and thank you. And also, and when you're doing that, financial responsibility is part of it as well. I can't help it. I'm a mediator. What can I do? So thank you for your time.
Okay. Marco had something to say?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a little experience in these kind of problems. Well, what happened is next, a client had this all similar in a house. What he did is DOT didn't find anything, DEP didn't find anything. What she did is basically she hired a contract, and that's the case of the developer. He has to find a contract, fix it, and they figured it out at the time when they fixed. They know very well what is coming the problem, and then whoever is responsible who create this problem is either have a lawsuit or has to pay whatever it is. But somebody else has to come and fix. And then at the time when it's fixed, they figured it out what was the agency, or maybe it's their own building have the problem he has to fix. But that is the best solution usually in this case, is the developer has to figure it out, resolve the problem, And then when they fix the problem, then we'll find out exactly if DOT or DEP is responsible, and then they have to pay, period.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's right, Marco. That's what we're going to try to do, and we're going to put our heads together, and hopefully we can get this solved. If there's no other business or comments, I would like to adjourn the meeting and thank everyone.
There's one more hand up from someone from the public named Diana.
Okay.
Hi, it's Diana.
Hi, Diana.
I'm actually the property manager for Rupert Yorkville Towers condominium in Knickerbocker Plaza.
Oh, right. Whoa. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Invited by Rita on this issue. I just want to say, yes, thank to Colleen. DEP was out. I was with them this last time when they turned on all the hydrants, did everything. One thing I want to raise is that Mike Farnan from the DEP, right? He had said that there was DEP or was he DOT? I'm sorry, I can't remember right now. That there was a sewer collapse up on 3rd Avenue, right at that gate. So, and that sewer collapse was fixed. So my understanding or my thought is that that's what caused our problem. And that was fixed. And now what the problem is that the water used to go from underneath and cause the undermining of the pavers. Now, because of all that problem, and you see the holes there, the water's getting in from the top and pushing all the sand there. And, you know, when Rita says, you know, the dye test and this, that, and the other, I was there. I was there when they did the dye test, and they wanted to try to tell me that what we were seeing on the pavers outlining everything in green was an overrun of the dye there. That wasn't the case. But, you know, we just did this last time when the DEP was out there, it came to light that there was a sewer collapse up there and it was fixed. And now how are we responsible to fix all this? And it's not just that area. If you go halfway down all the way up to the Cagney Memorial, the pavers of the street are at the same level as the sidewalk. So that whole street, almost all the way down to the Cagney Plaza, has to be redone. And I can tell you that the Rupert Yorkville Towers condominium, the board of managers there is not of the opinion that they have to pick up that expense.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Diana. We appreciate that. And
Thank you.
We're gonna get together with Will, and we're gonna see if we can come up with a plan that can solve this, because this is one of these typical New York City issues where everybody points to everyone else. And we'll find somebody we'll find a way to get this done, hopefully. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to adjourn, and we appreciate everyone's coming to the meeting and participating. So see you next time.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Yes.